Hello and welcome here to the BNB Show. My name is Brandon, and this guy right over here to my left, that is Brendan Nelson, Seahawks. Brendan Nelson to you. Brendan, welcome back in the house. We get some fun things to turn over today. How are you doing? 24 hours since a new era began in Seattle.
I'm doing pretty good today. I think it's a good day. We won't know for sure if it was a good day until maybe a couple years down the line. But right now, in this moment, I think it's a good day. So I'm feeling pretty good about things, and I think a lot of people out there are also feeling pretty good about it. So if I'm happy and they're happy, then it's a good day.
Yeah, it's also nice that in a fan base that a lot of times has some differing of opinion in their outlook of the team and what the team needs or doesn't need or this and that this seems to be a consensus, uh, good choice by everybody's measure. Even if it wasn't their number one choice, it's a choice people seem to say, okay, then I get it. I do get it though. Even if I wanted this guy, but I get this. You know, I had this was my dog, but this adds up. This makes sense.
Yeah, I've kind of seen the same thing. Very few people are actually down on this hire. There are a few. There were always going to be a few, by the way. But it's as good as it gets.
And so I guess then is my first question. I was going to lead off the top with you. You just kind of answered there, which is you have the hiring happen initially in the first moment. You're emotionally feeling a certain way about it, but then 24 hours, it sometimes can hit a little bit differently. Do you find yourself 24 hours later with it, in that way and doing that?
Mm-hmm. Well, the way that it kind of broke was that the night before, so it would have been Tuesday night, it seemed like this was the way it was headed, right? Because you had the report from the several official sources like Pilasaro and Rappaport that it looked like this was going to happen. And then it happened. So you kind of had that opportunity to prepare yourself for it before it actually hit. Mm-hmm. But I find myself kind of in the same place. I find myself kind of thinking that the hire is one of the best hires we could have made. It seems like it was the guy that we wanted from the start. The way Schneider's talking now, maybe they would say that no matter what. But I find myself not shifting too far from where I was when the news first broke. I feel very positive about the way this can go.
Yeah, I do as well. I think that I still find myself even more reinforced, and certainly today's press conference, I think, at least from my perspective, we'll see what you think with this, but it only served to more nod and go, yeah, I do like this. You would expect them to probably say, well, this was the guy we kind of want all the way. I think even Schneider did talk a little bit today, though, about saying we were hoping for both Detroit and Baltimore to lose in the playoffs. So there was a little bit of we were looking at Ben here too. But I do think that this is the one that he landed on. We're hearing that maybe Ben's interviews didn't go as great. That's some of what's kind of coming out in the kerfuffle right now about Johnson and some of those interviews. And so I thought he had a really strong opening press conference. You remember the Nick Sirianni one a couple of years ago, Brendan, with him talking about flowering plants and watering plants. And remember that his whole where is this guy's head at? Was not that today. You had a guy that was buttoned up, on point, and delivered his message, and you can see how he resonates with players.
Yeah. So I feel pretty. I was impressed with the press conference earlier today. I didn't get to watch it live because I was resting because I had a little bit of a headache. But I did watch it a little bit later. And I came away feeling really good about it. I don't know how anybody could feel negative about that press conference. He didn't give away too much. He didn't talk about, like when they asked him about offensive coordinator, he didn't give up any names. When he was asked about defense, I don't think he gave up a name for defensive coordinator either. So there are still some specifics that we're waiting on here. But as far as initial press conferences go, that's you can't really say too much about it.
No, I thought, though, he did give you some nuggets. I mean, for instance, he could have said, we're going to run the ball and we're going to protect our defense and we're going to control the clock and the time of possession. And instead, he seemed to be leading a little bit with an approach of saying, offensively, I'm going to drive a little bit like I drive with the defense, where it's about growth and it's about being willing to do kind of everything, being versatile, not being kind of caged up to one sort of philosophy or approach to what you need to do, where you would have expected sometimes. I'm sure if we've gone through a lot of defensive hired head coaches, I'm sure a lot of what we would have heard at that time in their first introductory presser would have been run the ball, and we're going to be running the ball, and that's what we're going to, and he specifically had some opportunities to step into that particular hole and didn't necessarily do it, in my opinion, which, with the Grubb rumors, especially, that kind of goes in tandem with that. It does seem to lead you to believe, that gets me a little more excited here, Brenda, that he's not going to look to do the boring defensive minded hire here, that there actually might be something a little bit more exciting going on here.
Yeah. He did say that we want to be a physical football team, I think, when asked about the offense, which that could be implied to take, run the ball, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. I think we've learned that in recent NFL times. I think it just means an investment in the offensive line, which a lot of people are going to be excited about if that ends up being what we do. So that was one thing that I took away from that. He did say that he was going to handle defensive play calling, which was definitely interesting to me, because I was wondering about that, which obviously is fine for now. But I will say this, I hope that down the line he's able to find a defensive coordinator that he trusts enough to allow to do play calling, because I want him to be able to focus on his responsibilities as head coach. But for now, it's obviously fine and probably what we were expecting to do anyway.
And he did say that that's his intention in the presser, was that while he's going to call the plays initially, it's until he can get somebody brought along who he's got of the same mindset and who will understand how he wants the play calls to, come out and be sequenced and put together. So to your point, it seems like that is his long-term goal. And this is not to be the Andy Reid for the next 30 years on the defensive side of the ball, but to offload that eventually. And my opinion on it is that, look, if there's so many offensive guys that can do this, Brendan, why can't a defensive guy do it? Why are they so much more impeded versus the offensive guys, and then how they're able to get it done, and guys that are very successful getting it done, including our own Mike Holmgren, who got us to a Super Bowl calling plays. So,
Right.
yeah, I'm just I'm not necessarily scared off on that, but I think that that's okay if he's got to do it initially out there. Were there any other tidbits in the conference that you took away that were of interest to you?
Well, he was asked about the offensive coordinator. I think one thing he said that kind of surprised me, that he was this particular on it. Experience calling plays is not something that he's prioritizing, I believe is the way he put it, when trying to find an offensive coordinator, which, I mean, obviously that doesn't preclude him getting somebody who has called plays before, but I do find it to be pretty interesting that he would say something like that. And given the fact that he's a defensive first guy, you'd think you would value play calling experience. I still kind of am sitting here hoping we end up with somebody who has done that before, like a Frank Reich or a Frank Smith, or a they're talking about Ryan Grubb now. That would be certainly interesting.
You like that
one? I don't like it as much as Frank Reich, but I am intrigued by it for sure. I am going to, at the very least, see the upside if it happens. But
what has you down on it versus Frank Reich?
Well, Frank Reich has experience play calling in the NFL successfully, for one. He's not going to get poached as a head coach ever again, I don't think. So if you get him and he's good, you've got him for as long as you want him. And also, when he was at UW, I mean, obviously he did a phenomenal job. I kind of felt like he was the play designs were better than the play calling for me. Like, the play calling was mostly good, but there were definitely some games where I was like, why are we committed to running the ball up the middle so much? Like, why is this so uncreative? And then by the second or third quarter, usually he'd get it right. But I thought the play designs were always superior to the play calling. So I'm a little, I don't like it as much as Reich or Frank Smith even.
Fair points all around. Yeah, no, fair points all around. I do like the thought process of just the idea of Grubb as much as Grubb himself. I like the idea that you aren't necessarily needing to go get a guy who gets plays. I think there's some safety in that, and a guy that's done it before. But I also think that this is a little bit of an extension of who he is, right? Like, when it comes to him as a coach, he talks about, we're constantly building this thing. It's about constant growth. It's not about, I've got hard, tried and true rules of how things are done this and done there, but yet I'm open to different pathways to find that point of success or to find effectiveness. And that seems like, whether it comes to him talking about his defense or his offense or his outlook on where the team is and where they, he seems to have a little bit of that openness to the whole process. And which just makes me feel like he's much more likely to land than the right guy when he's not fixed to a certain, check this box, check that box, check that box, check that box. as opposed to it's like Liz's hiring search. If we had the check boxes of it's got to be an offensive minded head coach, you don't get to Macdonald, just it's a get to the best and the right choice.
Mm-hmm. Right. I agree.
So do you have a horse in the fight as far as the offensive minded head, or not just the offensive coordinator in the next hire right now? Is there, you mentioned, I guess Reich is the guy you sort of did mention as your guy. Is that for you, of the available candidates out there and what he could do you think the best approach here?
Well, I do think that offensive head coaches are better in the modern NFL, but it just, for multiple reasons, it's better to have an offensive minded head coach. The last 10 coaches to coach in the Super Bowl have been offensive minded, and there's clear benefits to having somebody to guide your quarterback and your offense consistently, rather than having to swap a guy out every couple years, which will happen if the guy is good in all likelihood.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you have to do it. And we, as a team, were at a point where if we were going to do that, if we were going to get an offensive head coach, we were going to have to settle for somebody way down the list, right? Like I think the only real candidate left who was an offensive-minded head coach was Kafka. And I think if we were sitting here, I actually like Kafka more than most people out there, but I wouldn't have been able to get excited about that. And I guarantee you people would not be as excited about Kafka as they are right now about Macdonald. So at a certain point, you have to ask yourself, it's not just you need an offensive-minded head coach. You also need a good offensive-minded head coach, right? And at the end of the day, a good defensive-first head coach is still better than a bad offensive-minded head coach, or an offensive-minded head coach who's not ready. And that could very easily be what a guy like Kafka would have been. Now, there's no guarantee that Macdonald's ready either, but the resume is clearly better. The resume is clearly more established. And I think that I don't want to get too lost into this idea of we had to do an offensive-first head coach. I wanted to, but at the same time, it seemed like it wasn't in the cards. Once Ben Johnson took himself off the market, or somebody, or he was taken off the market forcibly, whatever happened there, I don't know. There just really wasn't that home run offensive-minded hire that we could have made. So I'm not going to stress about that too much.
I'm not either. I think if I was making a betting guess on Ben Johnson, I'd say he didn't do well in the interview / then also asked for the money. I don't think the money in itself would have been a deal breaker. You're going to pay Macdonald a lot of money on the 6-year deal you're giving him. I think, though, asking for the money and then not knocking the interview out of the park was probably the combination that just, put that to rest. I'm not buying into a guy's got a head coaching opportunity in this league and he's like, nah, I'm going to go back and be a coordinator again. It's happened, but it's very rare. And I don't see in this situation that being the way that, it could be wrong, but it just doesn't feel like that's how it played out. I've got a theory for you and see if you buy into it a little bit in this hiring. And this is definitely a guess and a shot in the dark, but I was thinking about this a bit today, and I think that there's maybe something to it. And don't answer this question first. Let me put my point to it, but let me pose the question to you so you can kind of think of it as I'm bringing this up. And that is, are we maybe due at a point for the defense to find a corner turn here? And if you track back to the start of football, we'll do this really quickly. Start of football occurs and you got the defense here, Brendan, right? And the offense is here. No forward pass, wing tee, running the ball. It's behind the defense, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you've got like 40s, 50s, 60s. The defense is ahead of the offense. Offense does what it can. And you start to get to the 80s, and the offense is starting with Bill Walsh and that to kind of catch up to the defense. And you get into kind of the 90s, and now the offense is starting to middle of the 90s. It's starting to extend past defenses as far as, offensive coaches being hired, their effectiveness, the rules being slanted their way. You get into the early 2000s, and we really see kind of especially last 10 years, it feels like a real extension. But then we look at this past year, Brendan. Points were down. Third down effectiveness was down. Defenses for the first time in like a 10-year period started to take a little bit of a step back and grab a little bit of that power back. It felt like just a little bit, maybe a modichrome. Is there a chance here that maybe you're finding a guy that's a potential of a centerpiece defensive mind that we'll see as a new groundswell coming up from those ranks, where now the defense starts to gain back on the offense? The offense hasn't always been ahead of the defense. It didn't start out football day one. Offense was way out here, defense here. It's been it's been a bit of a back and forth process, just a little bit. And maybe the defenses do. You buying any of that?
Doesn't seem to me that the NFL really wants that to happen, right? With all the rule changes they've made over the last 20 years, trying to make it easier for offense. Like, I could see that from year to year, there's going to be a little bit of variance, bouncing things back to the defense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's ever going to be so big and so emphatic that it's actually going to put the defense ahead of the offense. I'm not sure about that. The NFL, it seems to me that if that happened, the NFL would come up with some rule change to push it back the other way, because in their mind, they want Super Bowls like the Super Bowl we had last year, where nobody played any defense.
I think it's a valid point to say that the NFL is definitely going to push to the offensive side of the ball. The question I'd though then say with that is that, do you really feel like, though, the defense has been pushing itself forward with its own philosophies in the same manner of evolving that the offensive side of the ball has? We've watched pre and post snap motion, for instance, be built into offenses the last 10 years, and it's flipped on its face in its usage. It's gone from like 20% to 60, 65, 70% usage with offenses. Haven't the defenses kind of remained more in a bit of a stagnant position in their philosophies and their approach over these past 25, 30 years? I mean, you still have cover 2 Tampa Bay 2 defenses being run out there, basically. You still have cover 3 being still tried to be proliferated in a lot of places. That's what it feels like to me a bit here, where the rule thing is completely on point, but the defense to me has also been kind of dropping the ball. And it's like you have offense has got all these guys that are like, have Oppenheimers in the room trying to figure out how to build their next nuclear bomb. And we got defensive guys in there trying to still like work off a dynamite. And I just feel like there's a room here for somebody to push this ball a little bit more forward. And this is the type of guy that would be the candidate to me to be that kind of guy to do that, in that he's not held to a certain approach in his methodology, and that he's willing to grow, he's willing to adapt, he's willing to continue to build on what he already knows. And it's like we talked about today in this presser. It's like this started out as kind of the Rex Ryan's defense back in the day, and it's molded up through Wink Martindale, and it's gone through him, and he's taken to the college level, and it continues to, evolve as a process.
I mean, if anybody's going to do it, it's probably this guy, right? This guy who's been dismantling these Shanahan offenses and to a lesser extent McVay offenses, and did pretty much, I think, everything he could against the Andy Reid Mahomes offense last week. I don't think you're going to hold the best quarterback in the league to 0 points and 100 yards the whole day. That's not happening. But
no,
I mean, if anybody's going to do it, it's probably him, right?
Mm-hmm.
He seems to be that guy who could be on the cutting edge here. I just don't know if the NFL is ever going to allow it to get to the point where defense is actually ahead of offense, and we start seeing every game be like 17-14 again. I don't know if we're going to get there.
I'm not saying it gets to that. I don't think it gets to that point. I am talking about being for wherever the tide finds itself in the current given period, as far as scoring goes, that you find your guy with a tide setter on that as in his approach. That's what I'm saying. The tide may be in a modern age where, like, let's say to your point, Brendan, 20 years ago, 15 points a game led the league in point scoring. Now it's 20 points. You give up a game will eventually lead the points in scoring, right? Like, so generalized points are up, but you're still dominant at the given age that you find yourself residing within.
Yeah. And this is the guy who could do that. I can't think of any other like defensive masterminds on this level. Like Aviro's not on that level, right? Like Aviro's good. But if he gets a head coaching job in the next year or two, I'm not going to look at him as being the guy who's going to solve this. I'm certainly not like a Patrick Graham, certainly not a Raheem Morris. It's this guy. This is the guy who's either going to do it or nobody's going to do it, you feel like.
I do. And I don't think those guys would either. I think Evero's run more of he's just run Fangio's scheme right. But he's again, more of as good as Evero is, more emblematic of that guy who's just running more of that same that's always been run. Doing it the same way defensively, it's always been kind of done with some very slight alterations. And what I think is called for now on this defensive side of the ball is for them to start to look at what they're doing offensively and go, hey, we got to start doing that stuff. We got to start mixing it up in that way. We can't just sit here and be like, we line it up how we line it up, and here we go. And I think he does maybe provide us a pathway there. That's where the upside to this move, what I want to talk about here within this, Brendan, on my point on this, I long way around on this, is that the upside of Macdonald is huge. There's a bust factor to this. It now go from having the oldest coach in the league to the youngest coach in the league. No doubt first-time head coaches burn out at a very high fail rate. But he's got a huge boom factor to him as well on the other side. But it's just my kind of point on that. And that's the part that really does get me excited. We didn't go for the easy Quinn option. And to me, Brendan, I think you agree with this. Washington's taking Quinn as a consolation prize. They wanted the trip to Cabo. They're getting the steak knives. That's how I feel. So,
yeah. I mean, the stink of Dan Schneider is still over there. Apparently,
it's. I was also relating to like it's like the ownership's taken over, and it's like they've inherited a house from a relative, and many of you have had relatives like this where they didn't do anything on their back or front yard. It's a mess. They've had parties. They're hoarders in their house. Washington's just barely like started to clean up the backyard. They barely like clearing the kegs out and the plastic cups. They haven't even gotten to the inside of the house yet.
Yeah, I mean, the new owners I think are going to be good. I'll say that, but the facilities are still garbage. The stadium is garbage. They do have a lot of flexibility with that roster because they have all that cap room and they have the number 2 pick. But I was surprised they had to settle for Dan Quinn the way that they did. I didn't think the stench of Dan Schneider was still going to pollute them to that degree because I don't know what kind of contract Dan Quinn's going to get, but I'm assuming it's going to be a 5-year one at least.
I would think at least 5 years. Yeah, I would. And I'm surprised about it as well. I thought that new ownership and being a major market, that would be a driver for some coach, but it just didn't. This was just kind of a weird coaching search for all the teams this offseason, though, wasn't it? It just kind of was a bit of a peculiar one. I don't know. It just didn't feel as straightforward as it's been in the past. Could have been the whole NFL coming down with their mandates and forcing teams to slow roll it, but it was a little bit different than it's been in years past to me.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Let's get to, and we'll be definitely doing a show in the next show focused on this one in regards to a bit of the cap cut situation outlook on this offseason. This gives us a lot more clarity, Brendan, now that we have a coach on who will maybe go and who won't go. And certainly not knowing who the OC is, especially for the offensive side of the ball, this makes it a little bit harder on predicting this. But let's start out with first, who are the players that most benefit from Macdonald's hire on this roster, in your opinion?
Well, the obvious one would be Mike Morris, right? Because they've actually been together before.
Mm-hmm.
They were together at the 2021 Wolverines. And I mean, Mike Morris is a guy who has nowhere to go but up because he basically didn't play last year. So that's certainly a big one. If you're talking about guys that are already high profile, there's obviously Witherspoon. There's some very exciting things that I think he can do with Witherspoon. Some of the stuff you saw with Kyle Hamilton this last year was probably going to translate over very well.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that the likelihood of Jordan Brooks sticking around probably just went up. And I do think the odds of him being a better player under somebody like a Mike Macdonald is pretty good. So I am aware of the fact that the odds of us keeping a player like that around is definitely, I think raised. Some people would say we're going to get Patrick Queen. I don't know if Baltimore is going to let him out. Like, they can franchise tag him. They can probably offer him some stuff that we can't because we don't have a ton of cap room. So those would be some of the guys that kind of stand out to me. I think Draymond probably benefits from this because if Mike Macdonald was able to work with guys like Jadeveon Clowney and Kyle Van Noy to the degree that he did in Baltimore, I think he can find a way to work with Draymond Jones better than what Carroll and Clint Hurt were doing. Mm-hmm. So I think there's quite a bit of stuff on this defense that benefits from this because that's kind of the big draw of Macdonald, right? He didn't have blue chippers all over his defense, right? He didn't have like 10 all pros. He didn't have a bunch of future Hall of Famers. He made it work with guys like Geno Stone, who was a nobody before this year, I think. Clowney, who's been a journeyman for like 5 years. So I think a lot of people benefit from this on defense.
Even just a Matabuki's taken 3 years to get to where he's gotten to as a player this year in his breakout season. It took a bit of time to get him there. He didn't just burst on the scene that way, and he was that good. So when it comes to the Queen Brooks debate, we have Brooks with the higher injuries history, likely to probably get a contract between 10 to 12 million per year. Baltimore's got the Lamar Jackson contract kicking in, and they've got to make some decisions themselves. I don't know if they're necessarily, let's also remember this, Brendan, they paid Roquan Smith. So with the money they're paying Lamar and the money they're paying other places, they've got Roquan at over 20 million. Are they going to really want to get up and pony up $17 million a year for Queen at that point on top of that? I don't think they will. nor do I think they're going to have the ability to pull the franchise tag. So let's just pull this away for a second. If it comes down to Jordan Brooks and Queen on the same number of years of deal, and you get Brooks at 12 million, or you can go get Queen at 17 million, you would rather go with Brooks?
If it was up to me, I think I would probably go with Brooks. I don't want to. That's not a market-setting contract for Queen, but it's close. I'd rather save the money, and I think that Brooks is still a very talented player that Macdonald could do much better with than the previous regime did. I would go with Brooks in that exact circumstance, I think.
Okay.
Now, I want to be clear. Whatever Macdonald wants here, we should do everything we can to accommodate him. If he says, bring me Patrick Queen, I don't care if it costs 20 mil a year, then I think you got to go with it. If he wants to bring back Brooks for 14 mil a year, then I'll go with that too. You got to give him a chance to succeed or fail on his own terms. I'm good with it. But if it's up to me, I'm going to save the 5 mil on Brooks.
Fair enough. I think those are all good points. I lean the other way with it, where I think there's a substantial difference between those two guys in coverage, and I don't think Brooks is a remarkably enough better as a tackler or how he gets off blocks to have earned that way to earn this contract. I feel like he's being given 12 million without ever even giving you one league average season really from the position. Overall, when you take into account his deficiencies in the game, in the coverage, and how many yards he does still give up. He did a little bit better this year, but still, 2,300 yards in 4 years in this league is a lot of yards for a linebacker to give up.
Yeah.
Now some of that, like you say, though, is also back to the scheme, and some of this could be improved by coaching in a new scheme, and maybe he finds them more in man base, so there's some of that, but there's a lot of zones still in McDonald's schemes. You still need guys that can do that. How about Julian Love?
That's a good one. Yeah. I mean, Julian Love's a versatile player just in general, right? He can play both safety spots. He can play a little bit in the box. He can play a little bit slot corner, even outside corner. He did a little bit. So realistically, whatever you did, Julian Love has a chance to fit in. So I think he's going to benefit from this as well. And his versatility is going to help him when we throw some of the stuff we throw at the defense, because I think one of the key tenets of this defense is, they're only going to be sending 4 guys to pressure the quarterback, but which 4 guys is it going to be? Mm-hmm. That's kind of the key here. They're going to show you things pre-snap that are not what they actually do post-snap. That's going to be one of the key tenets here. And a guy like Julian Love, I think, has a chance to fit in really well, given that he had his career year under Wink Martindale in New York.
Who was, of course, the coach above Mike Macdonald when he was with the Ravens. Right. So, you think there's a little bit, he might be the most player that's most understanding the terms coming in the room, Love. And when Mike Macdonald's, getting all the terminology out, Love's like, I know what that is. I know what that is. I know what that is. So I think it was a big part to keeping, him here. Offensively, it does get harder to predict. I think offensively, we pretty much know pretty straightforward as to what's being kept and what's being left. I think, it's a little bit, but overall, is there any players that didn't benefit from Mike Macdonald coming here, that this puts you now on a square path to probably chopping block city?
To my recollection, during the press conference, he spoke about high character.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder about, it sounds like this guy's going to make the decision for us, but you have Adams, who kind of ended up in the firing line a little bit last year for some of the things that he was doing off the field. Now, again, it's starting to look like Adams is just going to retire and make the decision for us with some of the way he's been posting on Insta. I don't know if you've seen that or not, but there's something going on.
I've taken it that John's a guy that does tend to be a pretty head-on, straightforward guy with the players, and that he's not going to have the Super Bowl end and on Monday get up and then announce that Jamal's a post-June 1st designation cut, right? He'll have laid the tracks down with Jamal already before the train comes over, saying, Jamal, this is where this is going to have to go. And while I do agree with you to a certain degree on the Macdonald stuff, is having to give him some of that ability to do stuff, I do also think John's got to affirm his role as the general manager here on certain decisions and be able to be that guy now in this role for the first time to truly be able to guide this bus. Because that's also a part of this process, is John not having a coach wholly leading him around by the nose, as far as where he's got to go everywhere, but also for him to be the guy to come and say, this is a place where I've known in the past to say this shouldn't have happened and I couldn't do it. Now where I got to do it. And I think when it comes to Jamal, that's one of those ones where you look at the risk, you look at if it was a stock, Brendan, if you're somebody sitting in front of you, hey, you want this stock? Here's the fundamentals on it. I don't think you're looking at those fundamentals saying I'm signing up for that stock next year at that price. I don't. And I think that if that's the bottom line, you've got to move on from Jamal. I think the conversation's gone on between him and John already. And that's why Jamal is probably posting this, is he's also probably heard enough scuttlebutt around the league that there's not really much of a market for you anymore, my guy. You are reduced as a player. And the game's going away from Jamal Adams' skill set. The box safety that you can't trust in cover 2 or single high, those days are Dunsky. And I feel like people are asking me like, well, he'll get the most out of Jamal. He'll make Jamal the Hamilton role. And I'm actually encouraged you say Devin, because that's way more of a chance you doing that than you doing the Jamal. You couldn't talk about 2 more different players than Hamilton and Adams as far as what they bring to the table and who they are. And, there's some similarities, I guess, between the two, but Hamilton's just so much of a better, fully well-rounded player. And, this defense, you're going to need your strong safety to do free safety stuff. And Jamal can't even do strong safety stuff in a cover 2 situation. Look, so
yeah.
And
I've gotten some comments, people theorizing that the reason why Pete got fired was because he went into that meeting with Jody, started talking about all of his plans on how he was going to use Jamal better next year. And Jody was just like, we're not bringing Adams back next year. I hope you realize that. And he's like, no. We can do this. If we do it like this, we do it. And then she's okay, you're done. A lot of people actually think that was the crux of why things flipped in that meeting, the way that it probably did.
It makes sense, especially if you tandem it with the fact that he was probably reticent to not want to let go of his coordinators too, right?
Yeah, right. So I would say Diggs is probably in more trouble than he was before. Pete was probably his number 1 fan in the building. I think that's fair to say. Yeah. And safety that is that one-dimensional is probably not going to work well here, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I'm anticipating Kawandre as well with it, where he did some more box stuff as the year went along. The last couple of games of the year, they actually had him down near the line of scrimmage at times, but not overall, of course, during his time here. And he's probably at this point, if he's still even as well suited in the league at this point, best suited as the single high kind of safety type guy. Where does this leave Bobby Wagner?
That one's tough. I don't know. I mean, he is a free agent, so we will have to make an effort to actually bring him back. So that's another guy who Pete was probably Wagner's biggest fan, right? Pete was probably the reason why you were going to bring him back if there was a reason to. That's hard, man. I kind of feel like we might have to, because we just don't have linebackers, and we might say, let's keep our leader around here. He's not going to cost that much money, by the way. I think he would probably take like $5 million for 1 year. I don't think it's about the money to him anymore. Agreed. But it would not shock me if he was just like, I can't use a linebacker who's that slow, right? I can't use Wagner in his current state that well. And why would I jump through schematic hoops to accommodate Bobby Wagner when I can just go get my own guy?
Yeah. Yeah, especially when there's in the draft, there's some good athletic linebackers in this draft that might fit to that mold and what he's looking for, to your point. But I think, like you say, the fact that Bobby comes back at a lesser cost, you know what you're getting. You get leader in the locker room. Macdonald was with Baltimore when they had an older Calais Campbell there who was still effective and maybe not the player he once formerly was. But I'm listening to Mike Macdonald talk at that time, brought in at that into the building when he was as the DC, and Calais was still there until he moved on to Atlanta last year. He talked about Calais being just such a good leader in that locker room and so helpful to the coaches as well as the players. And I wonder if not, maybe you would lean into that a little bit if you're Macdonald coming into here, and where there's a lot of this that adds up to making sense to bring in Bobby back because of that. It just goes beyond necessarily pure field stuff, but as well too, Brendan, he's going to use him in a better way than Carroll used him last year, right? You're going to see him more around how he was used, like with the Rams, than more of how he was used this last year. Less of spot dropping 20 yards into space and picking up the curling outside X receiver across the football field at a full speed as he's crossing you over the middle of the field. I don't think you're going to be doing as much of that to Bobby in this defense.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm ready for either it to go either way on the Bobby front. I think it could go either way. And if he is brought back, I think he'll be used much better than Carroll and Hurt were using him. So that's good. And again, we have a massive hole at linebacker. And even if you draft one, and even if you sign one, and Like, you still are going to need some help there. I feel like that could go one way or the other.
And this would be one of the spots when you talk about giving him the decision, Macdonald, on this one, Brendan. I would give him on that one the complete decision on that one. That's complete. The Adams one, if I'm Schneider, I'm coming in being like, look, this is my call. But on that one, I'd say, you can make the call on this one, coach. This is the one where if you want him, we'll understand. He's not going to cost a lot. Let's do it. And if not, I get it as well. Completely makes a lot of sense. Silas McDonald, thank you for the $2 donation. He says, if Justin Matabuke isn't tagged, would you all want him?
I would definitely have a discussion about it. I would definitely be open to it. A really good player, had a lot of success this last year. Probably going to get paid a lot though. And I mean, look, maybe you want to go to Macdonald and say, you got to find the next Justin Matabuke, because Matabuke wasn't a blue chip or anything when he came in, right?
Like a third roundish guy. He's toolsy third round guy that you weren't sure, that was about it. Yeah.
So part of the reason why you bring in Macdonald, I think, is because you think you can get great results from your defense without having massive investments on that side of the ball, where you don't need to put together the next Legion of Boom with like 5 Hall of Famers all playing together at once in their prime. So this goes for a lot of the guys who are going to be leaving Baltimore this offseason. Patrick Queen and Justin Matabuke, but you also have guys like Geno Stone. You have some other guys as well that are a little bit on the lower level. Like, if they're going to cost a ton of money.
Give me your 5 rank. I'm going to give you 5 guys, okay? You got Matabuke, Clowney, Patrick Queen, Geno Stone. Let's go with those. That's a good 4. Let's go with just those 4. There might be a tier 3 guy that they might look to get, but give me those 4 in the rankings of, and take cost into consideration. So you have to take that in. Let's just say Matabuke doesn't get tagged. Let's just say that, like, the Ravens, crazy town, let him walk, or whatever.
I think my number 1 would be Clowney. I don't think he's going to cost that much, and it's probably going to be a short-term deal because he's older.
Okay. Yeah,
and
I like it.
I love Clowney.
I love Clowney too. I do too, man. He's awesome.
Yeah, that's one of those guys that I have an irrational like for that a lot of Seahawks fans don't have, and I can't totally defend it. Right? It's just like, I just like him. Leave me alone.
Yeah, I totally have a dog in the fight because I've hung with the guy at least online and playing, so I'm completely like, yeah, I'm all in on Clowney. Definitely bring him back in. I like it. I love him as a player too.
Number 2 would be Matabuke, because we need defensive linemen, and he's good. And I don't think he's going to cost I don't think he's going to be like Quinnen Williams money. I don't see that. I don't think it's going to be crippling. Number 3 would probably be Queen. He's playing a devalued position, off-ball linebacker. Like, I feel like you can probably find a guy you could keep Brooks for less money. You could draft Junior Colson, who, by the way, Macdonald coached at Michigan, and spend a lot less money. And I like Junior Colson a lot. He's one of my favorites.
He's mine too.
But that would be 3rd. And I don't want to spend big money on safety right now. So I'm going Geno Stone 4th. And by the way, Geno Stone could be a one-hit wonder.
He could. And you're spending just the fact, even whether he wasn't a one-hit wonder, even if he was just simply, you're paying this money to the safety position now. I think we've got to have learned our lesson on this one, and we're already going to still be investing. Even if we move off of Quandre Diggs and Jamal, we're still going to be having a lot of money invested and tied up into that safety position, with just their dead money on the books. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anyone else on that defense. There's like Rakia Sin is a free agent. There's Van Noy, but he's like really old. He's old. He
is possible though. That's a tier 3 kind of guy that he might bring in that he'd like as a vet, that he just knows what he's getting with.
There are a couple other guys as well. I actually made a video about this not too long ago, but most of the other guys were very low profile.
Yeah.
Ronald Darby was also, but he's been around a while. He's a veteran.
Yeah, he's getting old too. I would probably like your list. I'd probably flip the Matabuke Queen, because when I look at our 3 tech right now, I'm anticipating we're going to re-sign Leonard Williams. And if you're going to get Matabuke at 19 million or 18 million, and I'm going to get on a 4-year deal, and I get Leonard Williams on a 3-year deal at 12 million, 13 million, I don't know where he's going to land, but I'll take Leonard Williams at that point on the other end of it. The other thing with it too is at that point, if you do have Leonard Williams, there's no chance of Matabuki because you got Leonard, Draymond Jones, Mike Morris is coming back.
True.
I mean, you're already three deep at the 3 tech. It's more of the 1 tech nose tackle we need right now than anything else.
That's a good point. That's actually a pretty good point. Mm-hmm. I'm not convinced Leonard Williams is going to be 13 mil, by the way. I think he's going to be a little more than that, but the point stands. I think we're keeping Leonard Williams. So that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. It's not, it's going to be more like 15 or 16, but I kind of hoping we get a discount. Thank you, Silas. I appreciate the donation. Great question, man. Garth Knight, thank you for the $5 donation. Guys, let me be a Jamal Adams advocate. Only Mark Rogers would be so bold. It's not a lot of Jamal Adams advocates out there anymore.
Yeah. I'll say this. I think most of what has happened with Adams is not his fault. Most of it is just his body fell apart. There's no animosity here, really.
No, I feel the same way.
It just is what it is.
Yeah, it's a sad thing. It's not on him with it, but it can be sad. Then the reality still is the reality of it, which is just he's not the same player he once was, and the game's moving past him, and it's not going to trend back in the other direction anytime soon, unfortunately. And that's tough. I know it's hard, but it's also kind of the nature of the sport a bit. A lot of guys had to go through that. Thank you, though, Garth. And glad to hear there's at least one remaining out there. There's one left that does exist. Michael Mathis, thank you for the $5 donation. It says, do we think Derek Hall and or Mike Morris can be meaningfully good players under Mike Macdonald, even behind Nwosu and Mafe?
I think that this signing is great for both of those players. I mean, Hall has nowhere to go but up, right? Hall has nowhere to go but up no matter what we did. Mm-hmm. But I think this is a great signing for him. Look at the success that Macdonald had with edge rushers that are not considered anywhere near blue chippers in Baltimore. The fact that they, I think, led the league in sacks this year with that collection of pass rushers is kind of remarkable. He doesn't have Myles Garrett. He doesn't have TJ Watt. So Derek Hall, I think this is great for him, especially if we can keep BT Jordan on the staff, which I know we're keeping Carl Scott. So there are going to be a couple guys that linger over from the Carroll regime. And Morris, this is great for Morris. This is a big one for Morris because there's familiarity from Mike Macdonald. And in general, I think we both like Morris. Now, I think Morris is going to stay on the defensive line because that's what we need. We don't really need edges, especially if you bring in a guy like Clowney.
Yeah.
But either way, I think he'll be a meaningful player for us for sure.
Yeah, they showed the video of Mike Macdonald going through and the players being there, and he caught Mike Morris, and he bear hugged up Mike Morris. And he's like, "I know you." And he's like, "We're going to do some exciting things." So Mike Macdonald's eyes lit up when he saw Mike Morris in the room when he was going through, kind of hugging, looking at the players, kind of walking through a little bit. So I certainly think he's going to like Mike Morris and like what Mike brings. And I agree with you. I think that he's kicking and staying. Mike Morris is staying inside. It's a weird NCAA thing where they have these big edges on the outside and they ask him to come off that edge. And they just like the power and their ability to seal the edge in the run game. But those guys you can't do that at the next level. You can't be 295. I was watching last night, kid out of Alabama, Justin Agaboe or whatever he is, kind of that's what they got that guy all over that line. And he's out on the outside on the edge, Brendan, and you're looking back at the tail of the tape on him. You're like 295, and remember last year we had a couple of guys with Keon White and the kid from Bowling Green. Remember that guy? That was another one of those. He was like PFF was the most effective edge off the edge that year. And
yeah, I know who you're talking about.
And you're just like, but those guys just have a tendency to eventually get kicked inside, and Mike will be fine, I think, inside in there. And I think he's got some upside. It was just that shoulder thing was bothering him, I think, all the way through training camp. Like Brendan said, Michael, Derek Hall, I don't know. I don't know with him. That was a disappointing opening year. And he didn't give you a whole lot of flashes. He got a little better as the year went along at the end and started to give you a little bit of an uptick, but he just disappeared and didn't give you even one thing you could lean on and say, well, at least he was a good rusher for us in year one, or at least he stopped the run for us really good in year one. Fortunately, he was not able to do that. And so as Mike has Brendan said, he's got nowhere else to go up. It was pretty as poor a season as I think you could have for a second round edge rusher.
Yeah. And again, I do want to stress most edge rushers in that range of the draft struggle in year one. So I get it. they usually don't struggle that much to where they can't even play on a bad defense. Like there were snaps to get if you were competent, and he didn't get them.
Right. It'd been one thing if it was, well, Taylor took the step forward and Uchenna played all year and Mafi played all year, and you go, okay, well, what was he going to do? But like you say, you were like, okay, Daryl's not working. Okay, Frank Clark's not working. Come on, Tyreek Smith's not working. Come on in. Let's go. Okay, we're gonna have to put Draymond on the outside. I mean, you got to that point of things. So he's got to come around with it, Michael. And hopefully he can. Like Brendan said, though, the good news, Brendan provided a little bit of a silver lining on this one, is that there's a very deep track record of these edges sometimes coming in that first year and just looking completely lost and the game too fast for them. And they just don't seemingly like they're having to relearn the game. And then they come back year 2 or 3, 4, and then, kind of start to, find that footing. Guys develop at their own pace sometimes.
Or you're AJ Epinenza and it takes 4 years, but you'll eventually get there.
As long as you get there, right for that contract year, Brendan, right for that, right for when you earn that money.
Yeah. Gross-Matos was like that too.
Yeah. Yeah. It does happen, man. It's tough, man. It's tough rushing the passer off the edge. If you don't have elite traits that you can fall on, that you just, I'm super quick like Micah Parsons or beastly strong, or, it's a little bit rough. Michael with another $10 donation. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you for that. Double donation. Says, this may be the only time in the John Schneider era where I am so happy with the process that if it doesn't work out, I'm not mad at the decision. Great points in there, Michael.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one thing I said in a video earlier today. Whatever happens from here on out, this could end up being a bad decision, but it's never going to be a dumb decision, right? Because in this moment, this is clearly the correct decision to make.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer, you as well, right, Brendan? That there's times teams do smart things and have a very smart approach to the whole process, but it still doesn't give them that result. To your point on that, right? Where it's not just this, but on a lot of different things in the football. Bad luck can come in, injury can strike at the wrong time, something random can happen just out of left field you didn't expect, that's you couldn't plan for. But the things that are within your control, I think that we're controlling, and that's part of why I'm so over the moon with what they've done in this process and how they've come out with it. From my perspective, do you feel the same way?
Yeah, absolutely. This was a good process that led to this decision, 100%. Whatever happens from here on out, I'm not going to, we can't do the revisionist history thing in a couple of years if it doesn't work.
No.
Let's be very careful about that. That's one thing that I'm trying to talk about a lot. There's a difference between bad decisions and dumb decisions. Like drafting Ethan Posick was a bad decision, but it wasn't a dumb decision. Drafting Dwayne Eskridge was a dumb decision. So,
right.
There's a big difference there. And whatever happens from here on out in this moment, I really like this hire. So that counts for something. And that's not to say that Schneider might not go down with the ship if this hire doesn't work out. Like he's probably connected very, very much to Macdonald's fate here in Seattle. But I that distinction matters.
I agree. I fully believe it matters. And the fact that Michael, they've taken this process and been so thorough on it. They weren't jumping at the first hire. They didn't just go to Dan Quinn would have been the easy, safe option here. You want to just, you step up to the tee on the ninth hole and it's, you come up there and man, there's some dog legs left and right. And you just grab out your 3-wood and you're like, I just want to keep it on the fairway. You could have done that with Dan Quinn. That would have been the equivalent of that hire. Instead, John Schneider reached into that bag. He grabbed out the Big Bertha club head. And he said he did a big John Daly backswing. That one, Brendan, where it goes all the way back like this, where the club is almost touching the ground on the back and then snaps that thing forward and says, let's let the big dog hunt. And that's what they did with this in this search. And it has a bust factor to it. It ain't guaranteed success, but there are no guarantees in football. There's no decision that does not have a potential of failing out. Caleb Williams looked at as a near generational quarterback. The Bears could mess that up from the jump. And not necessarily be their fault. Maybe he just comes in and he can't make it happen. Maybe he doesn't learn to play on time, and that's his. He's like, just completely can't play on script. Just don't know how. I have to always do it as backyard football. That's not going to work. It's just things can come in that can upset you that you don't have any control over. But they've done their part here, Michael. They've done the due diligence. They've done the background work. John's talked about all that he had Mike Holmgren in the building a couple weeks ago. He's met with Ron Wolf, his old advisor. He's done I think everything in this process you could want him to do to make sure that he's checking with all the people and getting all of the advisors and all of the consultations out there he can to arrive at this final decision. And then you let it ride. So I love it. I love what they've done here. And I feel really good about this hire because of that, Michael. They didn't take any shortcuts.
Right.
Thank you, though. Appreciate the double donation. And Zen Lunatic, thank you for the $20 donation. My goodness, that is very kind of you, Zen Lunatic. I do appreciate you for that, brother. Says, just a thank you to you both for all your coverage during this transition. Much appreciated by most of us. Was it me? But I got a feeling from the presser that Geno is sticking around.
I feel like the person who needs to be one of the big voices on that decision is not yet here.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll say that. But Macdonald was mostly positive about Geno, I think. And honestly, I think that he should be. I know that within the fan base, a lot of people don't think Geno is good. There's a wide range of takes on what Geno is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think among actual like football people who work in football, like coaches, general managers, etc., there is an understanding that Geno Smith is a good quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that most people you bring in would be like, yeah, I can work with this guy for at least a year.
I 100% agree with that take, by the way. I think that there's a firm disconnect right now between some of the fan base and their view of Geno Smith to what pro personnel and people in the league look at Geno Smith. And he has a hard time sometimes getting the respect in town from some folks, man. It's weird. But thank you again, Zen Lunatic, for the donation. It's been fun covering this transition from both me and Brendan. I'm going to speak for Brendan on this one a little bit. And then the last couple of years of times and covering the team, you can't always, especially as we were going into mid-year. I mean, we were trying to do previews of games and we're like, well, we can tell you guys what they should do, but we know they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
It got to such a point of just, we're stuck in the mud here. The wheel's spinning, but we're not going in any forward direction. And we find ourselves in this offseason now finding the team moving in a forward direction. And that has definitely invigorated me. I think it's probably done the same for Brendan on his stance of it. And that, hey, we get something fun to cover here. We get something that's actually active and doing smart things. And you understand the decision-making and they're not just trying to apply the same approach and methodology at all times and never change and never adapt and never evolve. And we're going the complete opposite direction, by the way, that Mike Macdonald spoke today, Brendan. And it's very, very encouraging.
Right. Absolutely. Also kind of interesting that he mentioned Drew Lock by name in that conference. I don't know. Did you catch that?
I didn't. He slipped that one through. I missed
that one. And Drew Lock's probably not going to be on the team in a month and a half. I wonder if he knows that.
Yeah, I think like you said, you would expect him to just kind of say good things no matter what a little bit to do the kind of the political answer on this. I do expect Zune Lunatic, Geno to stay. I think kind of regardless of the first, whoever you're bringing in the OC, I know they'll have some, somewhat but I think they'll recognize what Geno's done, the cost benefit analysis, all that. It still doesn't mean you don't draft a quarterback probably at some point in this draft, but I do believe that Geno does remain at this point. And even the way he put it, well, he's at the Pro Bowl, isn't he? And it's kind of like, it was kind of like a comment itself of like, guy's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. So 50 touchdown passes over the last 2 years, and he missed 2.5 games.
Yeah.
That's no joke.
No joke. It's the guy's a good player. It's not to say he's a top 5 quarterbacker, but it's again comes back to and I've gotten the debate so many times. I've reached the point of my channel, Brendan, where I've just had to say, okay, I can't do the debate anymore in Geno. It's reached that spot where I don't think there's any more where to push the ball forward. It's reached the spot where we're just hitting the wall against the folks that look at Geno and go, no, can't do it. Get him out. No, where it's like, okay, I'll never convince you, but I truly do hope, Brendan, that this team puts an offensive line around Geno Smith and gives him that. Because then these guys that are those naysayers who've been sitting for 2 years saying, well, Geno can't do this, that you'll finally get to see a guy that's throwing for 4,500 yards a year and 35 touchdowns and being up in that, scratching the surface, just scratching on that outside of that top 5 state of things. And it'll come down to, I think, a lot better of an understanding from folks at that point too, of how much the supporting cast does really help out the quarterback, that the two are linked. One is not separate of the other, floating on the high,
Or how about a defense that doesn't force him to be perfect every game?
Right. That too. But be perfect because he has to be super efficient because the defense can be on the field for 2/3 of the game. So in my third of the game I'm on that field, I better score. Not to mention they're giving up points, to your point as well on that.
Yeah.
So
and whatever we do with Geno, we have to make the decision in the next 2.5 weeks. His contract Yeah, you've seen this, right? It becomes basically fully guaranteed after February 16th.
Hmm. Yeah. And I'm anticipating that it's going to occur. I think John's
Yeah,
long made his peace with this, that this
yeah.
is going to happen.
Yeah, the only way I could see it going another way would be if we hire Greg Roman as OC, which has been floated a little bit. And Greg Roman's always been a guy who wants a dual threat quarterback. Maybe he's just like, look, this is how my offense works. Give me Tyler Huntley. Give me or trade up for Jaden Daniels.
That's
Like,
what I
like
would. It would be Jaden or it'd be Bo Nix. Nix would
yeah,
be
Bo
another guy
Nix.
that would have run.
McCarthy's not dual threat, is he?
No, not he's got that Matt Corral mobility where it's like works
Okay.
at the college level and then pro level. It's like, dude, he's not that. He's kind of just okay.
Yeah. Hooker can move.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But I don't know why you would hire an OC that can't work with the quarterback you have in place. Like I like Greg Roman, by the way. I think he's done a pretty good job most places he's been, but I don't know why you would hire a guy like that when you have a quarterback like Geno in place.
Right. I wouldn't pair it with Geno. I wouldn't pair
Yeah.
Roman with Geno. You would put him with the mobile quarterback. And even that, though, I'm not sure about because I just think that approach ends up wearing that quarterback down over the course of the year. And then you get to the playoffs, and even if you've been effective and you've got a really good record, you got a quarterback that's kind of going in there limping and beat up all the hell by the time he actually gets to the playoffs, reduced as a player.
Yeah, or Steve Spagnuolo just cooks up a masterpiece and has him not knowing where the hell he is.
Exposed to the fact he can't throw a 9 route.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just make you throw a 9 route. You ain't gonna complete one. Go give it a shot. Damn it, not again. Thank you, though, Zen Lunatic. Very kind for you on the donation, man. Ryan Wilson, thank you for the $5 donation as well. Says Macdonald plays a lot of cover 3 zone. Excited to see some coverage inside linebackers. An early thought on draft picks or free agents?
Okay, so draft picks. Obviously, you have a couple Michigan guys, Colson and Chris Jenkins. I really like Edrin Cooper. That's a guy you turned me on to. I didn't even know who he was until you mentioned his name.
Good player. Second best middle linebacker I got on my board right now.
There was another really good cover linebacker in this class. It was
Peyton Wilson.
Peyton Wilson, yeah. He looked good at the Senior Bowl, by the way.
30-inch arms, I heard. That's tiny arms, man.
Yeah,
that's
not great.
But he is 6'3", so it's weird, dude. He's got like this tall frame and the little.
Yeah, it's like when Deadpool gets his arms cut off and he's growing them back.
It is. He's got Deadpool arms, dude. And he's 6'3", so the proportions make no sense if you look at him on the field.
Jalen Ford was another one.
Ford, pure cover line. That's the best. That might be the best cover linebacker in the draft, maybe, arguably.
Yeah. So those would be draft guys. Free agents. I haven't done my deep dive into free agency yet, really. Is Al-Shaair a free agent? Aziz Al-Shaair? He's interesting.
I think he is. Is he out there with the Titans right now?
I know he was a Niner, right? Is he still? He's not still.
No,
there,
he's with the. He signed last year on a deal with the Titans.
Okay.
I'm looking right now, real quick here at the just the middle linebackers on free agents because I'm not as well versed necessarily on that as well, quite yet. You got a couple guys here. Devin White is interesting. Still only 25 years old. Josie Jewell of Denver. Of course, Wagner, Levante David, Jordan Hicks, Devin Bush, Patrick Queen, Denzel Perryman. Those would be your best guys. Willie Gay's out there.
I do like Denzel Perryman. He's good. I like that guy. Yeah,
Denzel Perryman's good. He's been around the league a little. He's getting a little bit up there in age, but he's always been. He's one of those guys. He's the Latavian Murray is at the running back where everywhere he goes, he's like really does a good job, but he just never sticks anywhere.
Latavius Murray, yeah.
It's like he's the linebacker version of that Denzel Perryman. So there's a couple guys in there. Devin White might actually make some money, though there's a bit of a varied opinion on him out there a little bit. But you're probably going draft.
Off-ball linebacker is weird. If you're not in like the top 4 or 5, you just don't get money.
No,
like you look at the AAV for inside linebackers, it's like 20, 19, 18, 17, and then 10. It just drops off a cliff.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not. It's still devalued unless you're really elite at the position. And if you're elite, then you'll get paid. But otherwise, you got to be right up there. I actually like the draft middle linebacker wise. There's a lot of guys between my second and third round. I haven't even looked at all the middle linebackers, Brendan, but I've got at least 9 guys with a second or third round grade on them at the middle linebacker position, Ryan. So Brendan mentioned some names. Junior Colson, Edrin Cooper, Peyton Wilson are going to be, I think, your top 3 in your clear. I think they'll be your clear top 3 in this draft. Then you'll have your next tier, which would be, I think, Jeremiah Trotter, Cedric Gray, Maurice Lufa, Jalen Ford. And then I think you got your next tier below that, which would be Jamin Dumas Johnson, Shmel Mondon, Edefonu Lufosu, and Tommy Eichenberg.
I'm pretty sure one of the Georgia guys is staying back. I can't remember if it was
Probably Jamal. Try Jamon.
Yeah. One of them I know said like he's not declaring.
I'll take him off. That's probably why he's not. Then he thinks he can push himself up into maybe like second, first round grade for another year.
Yeah.
I got him more third, fourth in that range at that spot. But Ryan, there's a lot more middle linebackers in this year's draft, Brendan, than there has been. Hasn't it been kind of, it's been lean in the second, third round range in the last 2 years in the drafts we've covered.
A couple years ago they had like that was a pretty good one. It had like Leo Chenal, it had the Quay
But it only
Walker.
There was only those 3. That's the thing. It was like Quay was a first. I'm talking second to third. So Quay was a first rounder taken, but remember that was the one with this, that there was only, I think, 3 middle linebackers taken from the second and the third round range of that draft.
Troy Anderson was one of them, right?
He was one of them. You're right on Chanel. And then there was the one other kid that I'm spacing on that
Karlaftis was first round, right?
He was an edge.
All right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, this draft doesn't have blue chippers though. Like there's no like punch it in first round linebacker. Like there usually is at least one. I will say that, but it's good. I mean, this is did you mention Barrett Carter, the other Clemson guy?
I heard he went back.
Oh, okay. I liked him. Too bad.
I liked him too. But another guy that was probably in that third roundish range that said, hey, I can get myself up in the first round if I go back another year. Because he didn't have the best of years this year. That, even Trotter, I don't know. He was okay this year, but there's some up and down, dipping left and right on that one. But I think that you're right. The blue chip isn't there, but guys that can be good and functional, that you're picking second or third round. And if they want to double dip, that you could theoretically double dip with the amount of guys that are there this year. And and looking the last couple of years, there have always been 3 guys, Brendan, in that second or third round range. There's always been that, but you just haven't gotten much more than that. It's really, you feel like you end up feeling like, man, we just kind of scratched all that there was. Remember, there's that year was Devin Lloyd. And then you went all the way down to like the second round. There was a couple, and then like one in the third. It's just been a very lean position lately.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why it's been deprioritized, I guess.
It's true. This guy likes him though. Mike Macdonald likes himself as linebackers.
Oh yeah.
He sees a lot of value in them.
That's right.
Ken Norton would love him. Silas McDonald, thank you for another $5 donation. I appreciate you for that, Silas. He says, KJ Wright said yesterday, Pete isn't going to be part of anything with the Hawks. It was just to give the news. It was just to give the news lightly to fans. Thoughts? I find it disingenuous.
Hey, he's getting George Lucas, right?
Yeah, basically.
Getting George Lucas, and I don't personally have a problem with it. We've got to be free to go our own way here, and there are going to be a lot of people making decisions about this team that are going to have authority over Carroll. So how much of that stuff is really going to get through?
Yeah. And I think that the fans, I know Brennan's dealt with it in his reactions on his channel. I've dealt it in my reactions from some people. There was a very passionate segment of this fan base that was very pro Carroll and very pro Carroll remaining as the head coach. And that news was as much to kind of, I think, try to soften it up for them. Did it work? Was it, to your point, was it just a disingenuous move that, kind of blowbacks when you're not being real about it? Maybe. But I don't think that they were intending to be, mean about it with their approach with this. They're trying to lighten it up to people like Silas and landing it and make it try to come across a little bit easier rather than just being cold blooded. They were trying to, I think, as well look as respectful as possible to Pete in this process and not having it come off in any way, shape, or form as, even if it looked that way clearly to guys like me and Brennan, that it's coming off as a firing, instead it's just, this is, this over here instead.
Yeah. I think it was more just out of respect. And I'm sure that if Carroll had the opportunity to go somewhere else, he would leave in a heartbeat. But that opportunity never came up. there's no openings left unless Andy Reid retires after the Super Bowl. And I don't think they'd be jumping on Pete Carroll if that happened. I think they'd probably go call up Belichick or something.
Ben Johnson, Vrabel. Vrabel's got connections to that organization. I think that he would just as likely be maybe potentially the guy there. So, yeah, I can get the fact it comes off in that way, and it is. It's not inaccurate to say it, Silas. It was disingenuous. They knew that he wasn't going to be in the building after that, but just a way to try to, as you say, lighten the touch on it. Not
Yeah. Did you hear the rumors a couple days ago about the Carroll firing? Another potential theory. It was basically that Carroll said before this season started that I'm going to retire at the end of the year. And then after the last game, he's like, hey, guys, I changed my mind. And they were like, no, you don't. You did. No, we've already moved on. And if that's the case, that puts them in a tough position, right? That's like, we've already made plans. If that's true. And I don't know if it is. We'll never know until somebody writes a book.
Yeah, we'll have to wait for the book on that one. That one, it both makes sense to me in that why the season played out the way it did if it was true. And then I both also think I'm not sure that I buy that it is the truth, because there was so much of a Carroll talking about, I know I'm coming back, when he was talking about in that last press conference he had the year before, he came back a couple of days and he said, okay, I've been, so there would, to me, that was a little bit of, that conversation wouldn't have just happened at the end of the year suddenly where it's like, no, I want to stay. It was more probably over, the year. He was like, no, I kind of want to more stay over the course of the year to them. And then they kind of went, and then it evolved at the end of the year. We're like, we're not really feeling that on that. But it also, the explanation part for me, Brendan, is we've had teams in the past with Coach Carroll that have been beat on the X's and O's, right? They've been out coached on a gamely basis. We've had Coach Carroll teams for years that have been undisciplined. Okay. That's been a part of what you get. It's what you get, the good or the bad with Coach Carroll. The new part this year that was unusual to me was the players not playing hard for him. The multitude of guys making business decisions. And I've always felt this way about an athlete or a coach. And it's very, maybe just unique to sports. Maybe it's also, you can apply it to businesses across any occupation. And that is, if you've got one foot already halfway out the door, if you're thinking about retirement, then you got to retire. You got to call it a day, because that's going to come across that lack of that edge, that lack of that same I'm all in style. Even if you're trying to fake it to make it on the surface of things, people will be able to read beneath it that you're not in on it and that you're checked out just even a little bit. And that little bit is just enough not to have them fully buy in. And that part of it could track, but I still come back to, I just don't think.
You're probably right. But I mean, everybody's got a theory, right?
They do. There's a lot of theories on this one. That's for sure. A lot of them. Thank you though, Silas, for the double donation, man. I appreciate you for that. Jessica Butler, thank you for the $5 donation. Very kind of you. I'm excited we got McDonald's. I'm excited we got McDonald. Can't wait to see what's in store for our team next. Now excited to see who we get for OC and DC. Any ideas?
Yeah, I feel like DC just gets somebody that he trusts. That's the important part. I don't feel the need to go get somebody awesome. I just somebody that he has a familiarity with and somebody that he trusts to do what he wants them to do. So the big one would be Anthony Weaver. That's definitely the big gun. A couple other guys on that Baltimore staff are interesting. The guy who just got plucked by Tennessee was definitely on the radar, but he's gone now.
I think Weaver just got hired by the Ravens as the DC.
Okay. Have they made that official? I know they're trying to. I don't know if they're, I wasn't aware if that was official yet or not. My understanding was that they were trying.
Oh, no, Zach Orr.
Zach Orr was another guy that was interesting.
He's been named as the Ravens. He's been named so that your guy's still available.
Weaver, then it's got to be Weaver, right?
Weaver would be, I think, the ideal. Yeah, at that point.
Yeah. So I'm not too worried about DC. OC is a lot more important now. I'll say that.
Very much so. I agree with Jessica. I agree with Brendan on the DC, because he told you today that he's going to call the plays. And that's, really when you talk about an OC or DC, yes, the way they train, the way they teach, the way they prepare for the game plan they build, all very important. But the fact that he's got the play calling duties handled, he can do that. It makes the DC a little bit less as important to the OC. And let's also remember with this, he's talked about, Jessica, that I want to bring this DC in and he eventually will take the play calling over for me. He's got also the history of going to Michigan and teaching the coaches how to how to teach the system, how to call the system. So he's going to have that track record bringing that guy along, whoever that is. It makes that guy, like Brendan said, not as important necessarily. It's not that there isn't, you want to hire the right guy, you do, but it's just not as integral to the whole process. From the OC standpoint, I think that it's very important for, especially if you want to maximize out this talent quickly that you got on this team and get this team to a contending state quick. Getting the right OC in here will get you there, I think, as fast as anything at this point. He's playing with a lot of options, I think, Brendan. I do. I mean, the name we're hearing, Jessica, is Ben Grubb, the UW offensive coordinator, is the one that they're talking about right now. And I thought that was pretty wild news to me, because I expected, as a defensive-minded head coach, Jessica, him to want to get a guy that was going to have a little bit more of a in the box, like Roman. We're going to run the ball. We're going to be 50-50. We'll use our quarterback's legs, simplify down some offensive things, protect our defense, eat the clock, that kind of stuff. But Jessica, with him even considering Grubb, that says, no, I'm looking to score points. I'm looking to make the offense a true, as much a dangerous part of this team as the defense. And that, beyond who he hires, Jessica, should make you most excited, because that means he's not trying to box himself into a fixed ideology, and instead trying to just, I'm going to make the best GD team I can make out here. I'm going to put, we're going to score as many points and hold back as many people from as many points they can score as possible. And I love that approach.
Yeah. My number one would be Frank Reich, for multiple reasons. He has proven NFL success. He's succeeded at a very high level, by the way. He won the Super Bowl with Nick Foles. Like, come on. Like, my God. He's been a head coach before, ton of experience. Not going to worry about him being over his head at all. Never going to get poached as a head coach. I like Frank Smith, the Miami guy, if he wants to maybe jump over and have a chance to call plays, because he's not calling plays in Miami. That'd be great too. I really like Frank Smith a lot. I feel like he's been unpersoned over the last couple of weeks, but I still am into him.
It's the name.
Yeah. Kafka seems like he's off the board now. They're saying he's going to return to New York. So I'm not really thinking about that, but I would have liked Kafka a lot as a offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Ryan Grubb, of course, would be very intriguing, and I would definitely be on board with it. I'd give him a chance and a half, believe me.
Yeah.
The Englund guy from Detroit, the passing game coordinator, he's never called plays before, so I don't love that, but he's very intriguing because that passing game in Detroit is pretty fire. Tanner Englund, something like that.
I ain't giving it a try. That's the one dad side I'm looking down to. If we have to hire him, Brendan, is then we have to learn how to pronounce that name. And some of those Holland Norwegian names will twist that tongue in a knot.
Yeah. T. Martin, not super into that one. Seems like a guy who could end up being overwhelmed, and he's the only thing he's done like at the NFL level that's notable is he did get better passing out of Lamar Jackson this last year as the quarterback coach, but that could have been Monken more than anything.
Yeah, I agree. I think, was there another name you had? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
There was, I can't remember his name, but there's a quality control coach on Baltimore as well. Offensive guy. I can't remember his name now, but he's like really, really young. Not super excited about that. I kind of don't want to bring somebody from Baltimore on that hire personally.
Yeah, I don't either. No,
but Chip Kelly would be a lot of fun.
Chip would be buck wild. That's for sure, man. You talking about both sides of the ball being just wild as can be and doing whatever they want to do. You'd be seeing that on both sides of the ball. I think the names that you mentioned, Jessica, are the names that are out there that are definitely interesting from my perspective too. I don't think I've anybody to add on top of that. And boy, Frank Reich, you got to look at his situation with the coaching. And it's one of those guys that in his coaching stops, offensive minded head coach, and you never quite get him the quarterback. I don't think Bryce Young is going to be all that in a can of chips, and he didn't have that at the Colts, but still a very good offensive mind and knows what he's doing. And your point about the fact you'll never see him poached as a head coach, not a lot of guys get a third opportunity if they failed the first two stops. So,
yeah. Oh yeah. One more guy would be BNB, because I think Washington's going to cut him loose now and he's going to be out there. He's had successes in OC before. Probably got about as much as you can get out of Sam Howell, if we're being honest, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think he did a functional job with him out there. There's not a lot there to work with him. You can only do with what you got to work with as a coordinator and coach. So he'd be okay. Engstrom would be interesting too. At the core of what they do in route running is they do a lot of option routes. So he'd be bringing guys in off of a lot of Gino and the boys reading the same page on the leverages and all that stuff and how they play it.
Yeah, like I'm thinking about politics when you run for president, right? When you're running for president, you want to pick a vice president that is the opposite of you. So if you are old, you want somebody that is young. If you are establishment, you want somebody that's an outsider. If that's usually how it goes. You want somebody that is not like you. So I'm thinking about it like this: like we have this head coach who is young and relatively speaking inexperienced. So I kind of want an OC that is older and experienced. I don't
Mhm.
know. That's kind of how I'm feeling about it. I don't know if I want to try to hit a 700-foot home run with the head coaching hire and the offensive coordinator. I wouldn't be against it, but that's why I like Frank Reich. I know he's going to be good.
Yeah, I'm okay with taking your approach with it too on that. I don't need to swing for the fences on this. I do think though that like you did say, I would be a little underwhelmed with going to the Ravens staff. None of the
Oh yeah,
guys on that jump out to
yeah.
me that are, yeah, this one. No, it's like,
Oh no,
it
that I agree with because T. Martin's never called plays before. He's never even been an offensive
yeah.
coordinator before. Like that's very different.
Yeah. And even like you said, the quarterback coach thing, he was a receivers coach prior to this past year doing the quarterbacks coach. He's only doing the quarterback coach thing for 1 year with
Yeah,
Lamar there. It's like that's sample size to the utmost there at that point.
right.
Thank you though, Jessica. I appreciate that donation. And I think everyone is hyped to the moon on this one right now. This is one from your, I believe, channel on this one with Carson Schroer, who's been a member of your channel for 32 long months. Thank you for that, Carson. It says, great feeling to be excited for what's to come. For a while, it felt like the same thing every season. Look out, Shanahan.
Hmm.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's got to be the most exciting part about this hire, right? The fact that he has dismantled so many of these offenses that have just had our defense coming and going for years now.
Mhm.
I guess the McVay offense did pretty good against the Ravens last year, right? They almost won in overtime.
It was Stafford. Stafford was doing that thing because I think you'd agree with this. Stafford almost had a quiet MVP season last year.
If he didn't
Like
get hurt, it would have been interesting. Yeah.
it would have been interesting. And what stands out is that you go to some of the games, the game he played against us in the first game, you can go and find like 10 to 15 throws that are like MVP level throws throughout the course of the game where he's just fitting it into a very tight space and spot. And it's just like there are a few quarterbacks that are going to complete that ball in that place. And he just had one of those games against the Ravens where he was just dealing. And they weren't necessarily playing bad. It was just that he was on his game.
Right.
But no, he's taken out. You look at the offenses alone this year. He's taken out Carson, and it's not just one, but it's a variety of offenses. It's the Detroit offense with some of their ways they run it. It's the 49ers offense and the way he took that apart. It's taken us apart. That's a different type of offense than what we run. It's like he could go at different ones and still find different answers. It's taken apart the Kansas City Chiefs, which is another whole offense, and the way he did that in the playoffs game, or the Texans. Texans offense ended up being one of the better offenses throughout the course of this year. Twice over, that Ravens took them apart and kept them at 10 points or under in both of the two games that they played him this year.
And that's Slowick. That's a Shanahan guy.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you have a right to be excited, Carson. As we were talking about earlier on this is the first year for us where we really don't know what we're going to get, but there's also a level of excitement in that not knowing what you're going to get, because there was a little bit more of a fixed path for us in recent years, and looking at what we're seeing here in this team a bit, and the light's coming out here a little bit. Ran of the Cut, thank you for the $2 donation. He says, let the new era begin. Whatever happens, I'm excited. I love it. Everybody's on the same page with this, Brendan. I think everybody's on the same
Kind of
page.
feeling like that. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the right way to feel.
I do too. I think this is an exciting time, and it doesn't, like you say, whatever happens doesn't guarantee success. We're excited for now. We're making smart decisions. Our stuff up here is being done at a smart level all the way through, and now we'll just see how it carries on downwind at this point. Thank you though, Rand. Liminal, thank you for the $5 donation. Liminal says, did you guys see that we requested an interview with the Lions passing game coordinator, Tanner Engstrand, for OC? What are your thoughts on it?
That would be a very high ceiling hire, I think. My concern is he's never called plays before. But there is immense potential there because that pass game is, and I don't think that passing game has the greatest talent. They've got a great offensive line, but they've got a quarterback that was a throw-in in the Stafford trade. Basically, he was kind of just like, chuck it in there so you guys have a competent quarterback. Their receivers, I mean, St. Brown's great, but Josh Reynolds was a journeyman, and who else do they have over there right now?
Jameson Williams.
Yeah, Jameson Williams. I mean, he's good, but he also missed about half the season, and they were still really good without him.
I think he's still a little bit that one-trick pony-ish to him too, as far as that deep threat. Like he's not fully well-rounded on the route running tree.
Right. So he's making hay over there with not the greatest players. Like he's going to have much better receivers if he comes to Seattle, I think. Do you agree?
Oh yeah, much better receiving core. The thing that impresses me, and I talked about a second ago, but just to dive a little bit more into it on this liminal, most of your coordinators in this league are going to have their route trees they're running on a play, and the routes are fixed, and we're calling this. I know where you're going to be. I know what route you're going to run with them, and doing the background on Ben Johnson when he was prepping for the potential of him hiring here. So much of the Lions offense is on the option routes. And that means it's on both the quarterback and the receiver to be on the same page. But to me, that also means there's way more stress than upon the passing game coordinator to make sure that those guys are on that same page. When you're reading this is what we're going to do. You got that too. I got that too. That's how that's going to go. So it's a little bit of an extra to me than just you're going to run the route you're going to run. This is the play that's called. It's a little bit of an extra layer of complexity to the process on it. And I love option routes because it's you feeling off of the leverage. So many teams play so much zone defense. I feel your leverage here, I go here. I feel your leverage here, I go there. It's very simplistic, but it works so well. And there's not really a counter to it unless you start trying to do those mind games of, Brendan, we'll show them the leverage here, but then we'll spin to the leverage over here once they see it, and try to, which is hard to do. That's an easier said than done thing after the snap.
Mm-hmm, right. So I'm, yeah. If it's Tanner Engstrand,
I'm calling him Tanner E.
Yeah. Yeah, if it's Tanner E, I'm for it. He's not my number one, but he is definitely somebody I would be like, okay, I can see how this works. And if it works really well.
Yeah. Agreed on the boom bust factor on that one too, Brendan, with him, because he has not called it before, like you said. So it is a bit of a risk there. But like where they're going with their thought process on it, liminal. Ben Johnson's doing some really smart things. Plucking from that tree, grabbing a branch from that tree is not the worst of ways to go. Appreciate you, the donation. David Pugh, thank you for the $10 donation. That is very kind of you, David. Very much appreciated. Says, long time no see, fellow Hawks. In this new D, will we likely have, how are we feeling about trading back to the 2023 range and getting someone like Edgerrin Cooper?
I don't think Cooper's crept into the first round yet. If anybody does, he might, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I think for either Colson or Cooper to get in the first round, they're going to need to run like 4.45 40s at the combines. They're going to have to do something from a testing standpoint to really push themselves up into that range, because I think they're both right on that edge of the start of the second round, David. When it comes to trading back, when I look at this draft and if I'm a general and I'm looking like a battlefield and how I want to assemble, got my artillery over here, got my cavalry over here, got my infantry right here. When I'm looking at this draft and specifically the top of this draft, and I see right now that we have 3 picks in the top 100, what I would try to set out to do is to end up with 5 picks in the top 100. That would be my philosophy, and trying to make that happen. Now, does that happen for me going 16 to 25 and 25 to 3? Does that maybe me doing some other things, moving around? I don't know how you make it happen exactly. Maybe it's not feasible to make that go. Maybe you can only make it 3 to 4. Maybe that's the only way to make it happen. But if you can get that many, my opinion on this is this. When you get, there's about 10 blue chip prospects in this draft, David. You get to 11 to 50, and you got a lot of guys very similar in where they stand and where they sit. And at that point, why not just get more of those guys in that range if I can, if they are very similarly talented with very similar upside, similar boom or bust rate to them, to varying degrees, of course. Cooper is just behind Colson for me as my number 2 linebacker. I love him. Those guys I think are far and away the top 2 off the board right now. I think when you go to number 3, like Peyton Wilson, he's got medical issues and T-Rex arms, and you're not sure on that one. But those guys are your true, hey, you're getting a dog in there. You're getting somebody that, he's going to get the job done in there in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we need to see how things shake out during the draft. Like maybe Bowers falls to 16 the way some people seem to be thinking he is. I don't understand how in the world that happens.
I walked through this today. I got you on this. Okay. Let's go through it. 5 quarterbacks go in the top 11.
Right.
3 wide receivers go in the top 11 as well.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got 3 tackles go in the top 11 or go in the top 15 picks as well, right? So let's go through that. We have 5, 8, we're to 11. I want to ask you a question on this. So that's where I'm going with this. So you have 11, you're the 11th pick now. Bowers hasn't been taken. Do you go 16 to 11 with a third round pick that you give up to move up for Bowers at that point?
Oh, instantly.
I would too. Yeah, I would too.
Bowers is like one of the 4 best players in this draft.
Yeah, I agree. I would jump up and go do it as well at this point. But as I walk through it, Brendan, I mean, Penix just got clocked at the Senior Bowl today, running 19 miles an hour. He's the fastest clock quarterback, and that even surpasses Bo Nix in his speed at the Senior Bowl right now. Bo Nix is getting a lot of push right now to get up into the top 10. There's some heat there. I already think that you're looking at 3 quarterbacks taken in the top 5. You know Harrison's going to go. You know Olu Fashano's going to go. You know Joe Alt's going to go up in that top range. So, Fuanga is having an amazing Senior Bowl right now so far over there on that side. He's solidified himself to me as a blue chip prospect at this point. So, I'm just saying, Brandon, it might get a little interesting drop day if Brock Bowers kind of slides away a little bit.
Bowers is still there at 12. I'm going to have to stop the draft stream to take a shower or something.
I know. We'll have to change my pants if we do trade down for him. I'll tell you that. Oh, well, thank you, David, though. Cooper's a great player, man. He can do it all. Him and Junior Colson, they can blitz, they can tackle, they can cover, they can run in space, rangy sideline to sideline. They got it all, man. So it's understandable to like those guys, and certainly they're going to be a target.
Right.
Kodad, thank you for the $10 donation. I appreciate you for that, Kodad. Hope you're having a great night, brother. Says the other day, KJ said the Hawks didn't allow contact in camp and that preseason games were the first time they do any tackling. What? He added MM requires contact in camp.
Yeah. You remember the what that Tim Allen would do on Home Improvement? That's kind of how I imagined that.
What?
Yeah, exactly.
Something like that, wasn't that?
Yeah, that was it. That was good. That's kind of what I'm imagining there. But I think a lot of coaches do this. A lot of coaches do things to take it easy on their players. Like Mike McCarthy, ever since he's been the Cowboys coach, at least, and maybe when he was with the Packers, Friday only does walkthroughs. There's no hard work at all on Fridays.
Yeah. I think that this is I think it's an interesting note, Brendan, that there's something to be taken from this with Kodad's note on this, and that this was something KJ talked about, because I've been hearing the same thing here coming out about that. And I don't know if it was that Carroll just thought he was getting fined because they were going so hard in camp, and he just kind of took it he got kind of pissy about it. And he's like, well, fine, we won't do any contact then. But it does make sense why you're having a hard time tackling, doesn't it? This stuff starts to add up as to why you're not as physical at your line of scrimmages, why you get your butt owned at the line of scrimmage on a weekly basis, is because, there's a great little soundbite of Dan Campbell with the Lions this preseason. I think were they on Hard Knocks this preseason? I want to say. And
I think so.
He's talking to the group of the players, and they're tired, and it's late in the training camp. And he's saying to them, I know you guys are tired, and I know you don't understand why there's all this contact, why we got to hit, why we got to do this. He says, I'm preparing your bodies. You may not understand it. You may not, but this is tried and true stuff that we know about how to prepare you for the season so that you're physically at your best. So we're protecting you against injury. We have to take you through this process. And I think it's the place that players sometimes, even players that have been linked for a long time, don't do the 2-and-2 on this, Brendan, as evidenced by the CBA negotiations, by the fact that they kept dialing back for more practice time. Yep. That to me was pure evidence of the players going, no, we don't want more money. We want to practice less. Well, that's also a disconnect on your part to understanding how valuable practice is to preparing your body, to keeping you out of injury, to making sure you're just doing it on this whole, the wear and tear of my body is breaking me down to the point where, too much practicing and everything, but you're also not doing the math on the back end part of how it causes injuries when you don't, now you're more susceptible on that stuff. And have we not been one of the more injured teams as well, when you look over the past 4 or 5 years, in addition to that, proof to my pudding.
Yeah. I don't think this most recent year we were, but in general, over the last several years, I know in 2019, we got completely ravaged. I think 2020 was pretty bad as well. So there's definitely some of that going on.
Yeah. It's also something we haven't seen with inter scrimmage games. That's another place to me where you can find, I know some coaches don't like it, but you have so little opportunity to create live fire situations for your team during training camp. And you have these teams that do it. And it feels like those teams really benefit from that. You know, a guy like Sean McVay, for instance, might not play all of his players in training in preseason as starters, but he will have them playing in those inter squad games. He will get that contact in there, that hitting in there. So, yeah, you're getting a new training camp this next year, Kodad. It ain't going to be a what is it when they call this? It's not a retreat, Brendan, but when you go to like a spa thing, that's like there's a whole name for it. Like I can't think of the name. It's got like a fancy name to it, but
yeah, I can't remember exactly what it is, but
like a spa retreat.
Yeah, with Wade Phillips, they called it Camp Cupcake.
That's it. Yeah, and that's you're not building a champion on Camp Cupcake. Right. You know, you'll build some bellies, but not champions.
Absolutely.
But thank you, Kodad. That's a great note, and it adds up. That's, as they say, one of those things that totally tracks to what we saw play out and explains it. It's already been dialed back so much. We talked about this in the hiring process. The next coach has got to have a methodology in place to teach tackling, because it's not a problem just here. It's a league-wide issue. How do you do it when the players have pulled so hard in the CBA negotiations to allow you to do it? I mean, it's kind of a secret sauce kind of thing to pull it off, you know?
Absolutely. There's some balance in here, and I don't know exactly where it is, but it's their job to find it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, though, Kodad. Appreciate you. Holy Hand Grenade, thank you for the $2 donation. It's amazing how Bobby is the last of the Pete era. Indeed.
Well, I mean, do you consider guys like Charles Cross to be Pete era? Because Pete was here when, I mean, I know what he's talking about, but the Pete era encompasses a long time.
It does. It's Bobby's career has been amazing. And, he's kind of had one of the more quiet, great year. I mean, he's going to be up there and should be considered up there as one of the best middle linebackers when this thing all is done. I mean, he should be up in that top 5 to me, no doubt at this point, with all that he's put together. And he's been remarkable. And if he comes back for another year, I think he'll still play pretty doggone good for us next year. In addition to that, and if he puts another year together on it, you know, he's never going to have an opportunity to overtake a Ray Lewis, maybe never have an opportunity to overtake a Jack Lambert. But I certainly think that he's overtaken your other guys that would have been just there. And maybe he's clipping on the heels of a Junior Seau at this point. Maybe not quite there, but certainly, you know, he's getting close.
Who was the Dolphins guy?
Zach Thomas.
Zach Thomas, yeah. I always liked him.
I liked him too. I've got him in the top 10, Brendan. I did a top 10 list on the middle linebackers a few years ago looking at this, and I ended up landing at Bobby at that time at 4 behind Seau, Lewis, and Lambert. But I did have him ahead of Butkus. I did have him ahead of the Chicago guy.
Singletary.
No, not Singletary, the other one.
Oh, Urlacher.
Singletary's like a 9. I think Singletary, Zach Miller, and all those guys kind of all are in about the same spot. Like those guys in that area, I think they all kind of.
Yeah, it's tough, especially with Butkus, because there are no stats. You just have to be like, well, I talked to a really, really old guy and he told me how good Butkus was. So therefore I'm just going to go with that.
That's true. Butkus is the hard one. Here's the thing with Butkus is that he was injured so much. You know, he's only played 8 years, and then I think he missed like a whole nother collective year of games minimum in the time that was, you know, in the 8 years span he played. So it's like, well, does longevity factor in then? I've got a guy here playing 13, 14 years and you played 8, but you played really the equivalent of like 7. That's where I have to ding Butkus down just a little bit, still keeping him in the top 10 as well. But I think you do have to ding him past the longevity has to eventually factor in a bit on it, right? It's got to come into play at some point.
Never made the playoffs either.
No, that's worth. Yeah, that's the other part of it too. And that's not all his fault, but it's, you know, Bobby's a champion. Bobby's a winner. So yeah. I feel pretty good still about that 4th spot. And Junior put up so many stats. He's so hard to overtake on that number 3. He's just a monster there. But Bobby is, I think he's pretty firmly rooted in there at number 4 at this point after this last year.
Right. I agree.
But yeah, pretty amazing. Holy Hand Grenade. He's still the man standing. Mega Lucario, thank you for the $5 donation. I appreciate you for that, Mega. He says, my concern with Grubb would be his influence in the draft. Maybe he pushes for Penix, and I don't want him. I don't believe he works with our team.
Penix ain't going to be there.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to do it. I'm feeling it. Like I've been so back and forth on the Penix thing. Right now, though, I feel like he's going in that top 12, I'll say.
Yeah, Michael Penix with his banana hands are going to go in the top 10. Did you see you measure those things out like 10 and 10 and a, you know,
Yeah.
He could make it. You could basically stack Kenny Pickett's hands on top of each other, and that would be Michael Pickett's. That would be Michael Penix's hand.
Yeah. Remember the Alex Smith hands? That was the other one I
Yeah.
remember when they measured his hands. It's like baby hands.
It is. It's totally
Yes.
baby hands.
So I feel like Penix will be gone, so I'm not worried about that. But does this push us to draft another Washington player like Fatanu or Rosengarten, who killed it at the Senior Bowl? People were buzzing about that. Did you see any of that?
I did. Yeah, he was getting some good praise out there, which is
And
cool.
he's a late round pick. That's easy to get. Would he push for maybe Jalen Polk or Jalen McMillan? I'm not going to do Odunze because Odunze's going to be gone.
Polk's the interesting one to me because he kind of did that, came out of maybe a year early thing. If he goes back another year, maybe he pushes himself into first round discussion. You buying that, or do you think he fits into being a third round guy and that's who he is?
He might go in the second this year. I think he's pretty. He doesn't have like the physical profile of Odunze. Oh, by the way, it's Odunze. I always say Odunze because that's how it's spelled, but it's Odunze.
I know.
And I don't know. I don't think Polk would have ever been a first rounder, especially not because this offense is getting pulled apart right now. And
he just sometimes felt this year like he was step for step with the amazing catches, like the catches where it wasn't just Penix throwing it to a spot where it's like, oh, he dropped it right in the breadbasket on Polk there. But he felt like he was kind of step for step with Romo and just the incredible catches and grabbing stuff. Is like, how did he reel that thing in, athletically to go up and get that and contested catches and all that. He was so good with that. McMillan, he seems a little more like McMillan seems more possession receivery.
Yeah.
A little more labored in the movements a bit. Not as
I'm a McMillan fan. I think that he just had a really bad year because of all the injuries that kept happening to him. But Odunze did separate himself from McMillan this year, clearly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But even a guy like Jack Westover, who I think is going to go undrafted, I think he's going to have a presence in the NFL. I like that guy a lot.
Yeah. I do too. Hey, he literally would drop nothing. That guy caught everything you threw at him, man. And they need a big catch. They go to him, and he would make the big catch every year. He was like, every time this year was like, go to him. I'm surprised here he's not going to hit. Somebody will take him in the seventh. Is it a size thing? Is he just 6'3", and is he in that tweener?
I think he's pretty small. Maybe he gets drafted anyway, though. He's just seems like the kind of guy that the Belichick Patriots would have ended up with back 10 years ago, and then they just hang around forever. Yeah. They're always annoying because they're always doing stuff in big moments.
Yeah. Just finding some unconventional role to fit into that works for them. Yeah.
Right.
Mega, I do agree with Brendan on this. It's more, this is drawing on the back of Senior Bowl. This is an ever changing thing, but Penix seems like he's pushing himself up more and more into that top 12 range. I've long said he's a top 20 guy, so he had nowhere to go but up from there from the Senior Bowl spot, in my opinion. And pushing himself another 10 picks, the driver on this, Mega, is really the number of teams up in that top 12 range that need quarterbacks. And there is only one Kirk Cousins and one Justin Fields that is available this offseason as alternative options versus going into the draft and getting your guy there in the draft. And that means to me that you're going to get maybe an extra guy or two taken up in that top 10, top 11 this year with this class than you might not have otherwise if the teams were a bit more fitted with their QB position. So Penix is a possibility, but I got to feel like Grubb understands, Mega, that if I take Penix, I have to have the pass protection, the offensive line to make that work. And if you have Schneider and Macdonald, two smart guys sitting down there with Grubb and saying, look, we like him too, but we got to keep this kid clean, and we've got work to do on this offensive line to get it clean before he's ready to go. I think that then makes it a little bit more hesitant to then go with Penix. But the rest of the guys Brendan mentioned, I think are all in play at that point. I don't think we go with a third round wide receiver. So I think Polk and second round receiver, either if Polk does go there, or McMillan, because we go more, I think, late if we're going to take any receiver. And I don't think we're going to probably target receiver, but that would be
what if we know that Lockett's going to retire at the end of the year, though? What if we know Lockett's got 1 year left? I think it's at least possible, because I don't think Bobo's ever going to be like a high usage guy. I think he's going to be a situational guy.
Well, it certainly depends a little bit on if they're going to dump Eskridge for sure, right? Like how many decisions did we reach last couple of years? They got to do this, right? And they still like, nope, we're trotting this back out here again. Let's roll it again. I think they would. I think that John does like Derek Young a lot.
That's true.
And if you put the numbers if we run the numbers on that, I think that, here's the thing I'll say to your point on that, though. In going through this right now, I think that we might, like, defensive tackle, a lot of guys in the second, third round. Cornerbacks got a lot of guys throughout the whole draft that are really good.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of have like 18 receivers in the first 4 rounds as far as my grades go. I got Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Romo Odunze, Brian Thomas, Xavier Leggett, Keon Coleman, Jacob Cowling, Emeka Abuka, Lad McConkey, Xavier Worthy, Malachi Corley, Jalen McMillan, Des Walker, Jamari Thrice, Brendan Rice, and then, of course, Jalen Polk. That's just the first 3 rounds I just read to you, Brendan. There's still Roman Wilson, Johnny Wilson, and Xavier Restrepo that I've got in the 4th round. So value on the board, to your point, if Lockett is gone in a year, the value might drive them to it.
Yeah.
It certainly could drive them to it at that point.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be the craziest outcome.
I'm just open to the distinct possibility. I think it's can't be completely ignored. By the way, whoever we bring as the OC might not even want Lockett. They might be like, okay, no yards after the catch, no blocking ability, undersized. Give me that $6 million, please. Or it's actually more if you do post-tune first. Which I don't want to do that. I think you can get some value out of Lockett. I've said this before when talking about Lockett. Yeah, he's going to be overpaid in 2024, but just take the L. It's not that big of an L to hold. Just hold the L for a year. You're going to still get good stuff out of him. He's still going to be relatively productive. Just deal with it next year. But if the new guy comes in and is like, I can't do anything with this guy, then okay.
Yeah, I could get it if the new guy does say that, but I would push on that new guy to go like, look, you've got, I mean, though, to your point on that, it's like, well, Bobo's not really a run after the catch guy. JSN can do a little bit of that. DK is not really that either. So you do go to the point of like, well, who is our run after the catch guy? If my offense is kind of built to be that,
it's Ken Walker.
Yeah, it's going to be your backs essentially. So, I mean, there is a bit of a valid point in that with especially the yak ability, Brendan. I mean, say nothing of the blocking, I mean, like we didn't talk about is like another guy we didn't speak about that could be a little bit in troubling zones here is Tariq Woolen in this situation with Mike Macdonald.
Oh, yeah.
And then I don't think that's likely you're moving him, but there's definitely an option here where the Ravens cornerbacks tackle. They're like one of the better teams in the league at doing that. It's a big part why their defense worked is that those guys put their nose in there and they get it done. And you have these offenses, Brendan, watching a lot of tape when the more normal blocks I'd see applied to us a lot of times, Brendan, this year and to a lot of teams across the board is that you have that receiver come down who's like 6'1" Cooper Kupp size, right? And he does the pin pull block. So he pins the block in on the defensive end. And then let's say it's left tackle. The left tackle then pulls around the back of the pin block, right? And the receiver doesn't have to hold the block for very long because it's a pitch play wide. So he's just got to hold it for that long. You just got to just stop the guy for a moment. He can throw you on the ground. Like Cooper Kupp, this guy can knock you on the ground, but you've slowed him up for enough immediately so we can get the left tackle in space. So now we have a left tackle out there clearing the alleyway for the running back out in front. And then you leave, oftentimes that tackle comes out, Brendan, he's going to the linebacker, he's going to the safety. And then you're leaving, you'll have then the receiver block down and pin the other linebacker or safety, right? So left tackle, let's say, goes to the linebacker. The outside receiver then goes down to the safety, and then you'll have teams that will isolate their corner one-on-one with that back on that pitch play on the outside. And they did it with us with Tariq Woolen last year a lot. And that's where then that corner's got to rally up and be able to tackle on his own one-on-one in space. And it's a requirement now. It wasn't always the case in the NFL, Brendan, but that's now become a place where you've got to take care of business with that.
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations about Woolen lately on my channel as well, but he's I think it's far more likely that you try to get it right with him than you just deal him now, right? Because the coverage is so good. Like even last year, which was a down year by his standard, his coverage numbers were still off the charts.
But are you going to commit to playing him in man?
Yeah, I would. I mean, look, the teams that play the most man in the NFL right now still play zone about half the time. It's not something you have to like purely commit to the way that some people might think. Like when I played Madden back when I was a little kid, I would play man coverage every snap, but no real NFL defense is doing that.
Yeah. Well, it's just not worried about that, because it does seem like McDonald's one, the more I look into it, is more zone heavy. He's not in that up at the 50% range of man, but he'll be back more in the depths of zone when it's said and done. So that's my thing with this is the tackling. And then, well, if Tariq's shown himself to be best in man coverage, but you're not going to put him in those conditions, is there better value for him in another spot than there would be here that would be running more of those concepts? That's part of what I wonder a bit about the situation as John looks at it going into this offseason. I think where it comes down is like you said, though. It's something I'm sort of toying with a little bit and wonder.
Right.
MJ Seahawk, thank you for the $20 donation. I appreciate you for that. MJ, very, very kind of you, man. I know you dropped big donut the other day too on yesterday's stream. So thank you so much, sir. I salute you for that.
Thank you.
He says, I think we need to take a step back this season. Trade back in the draft, but pick up picks in the 2025 draft. Cut Adams, Monet, see if Macdonald can find some gems that we didn't know we had. Let's cover this approach a little bit, Brendan. This is something that's a hotly debated item right now on my channel a bit, and that is to go for it or to not go for it, and to be essentially to going to the principles that he's advocating for here, Brendan. What is the smarter approach? I know that your answer is going to be a little bit of let's trust in what the coach wants, but I'm not going to let you off the hook with that. I'm going to press your feet to the fire on this one. What path is the right path? And you don't get to pick the middle ground. You got to pick either two grounds here. Go for it mode, or let's pull this thing down, reset that button, and turn this around a year.
I feel like we have too many good young players to just reset. Like you've got Cross, rookie deal. Still Lucas. I know Lucas could go one way or the other now, but rookie deal. Woolen, Witherspoon, Walker, Charbonnet. I think there's just a little too much. Mafe, that's actually one of the bigger ones. I think there's a little too much going on here for you to just say, let's just wait a year. In a year, some of those guys might want extensions. I don't know if any of them are going to get them because they're not like super duper stars yet, but I'm not looking to waste years of rookie deals that are really good. Like we've had two really good draft classes in a row now. I'm trying to capitalize on that. So I'm not going crazy, but I'm not pulling back the way that this seems to be implying. Now, I think Adams and Monet and guys like that are going to be gone no matter what because they're just not earning their keep. But that has nothing to do with pulling it back. Like cutting Adams is not a decision that you make because you're tanking for a year or anything like that.
Yeah. I maybe be fun for us to be debated on this one, Brendan, but I again find myself in the same kind of place you are with this MJ. There are people that I've heard have advocated for doing what you're doing where we take this down. When I look at this team recently, MJ, I think that there's been a lot of stuff you've left on the table as far as advantages. It's the little advantages that Mike Macdonald was talking about in his press conference today that we have left across the board. And we've had in our philosophy, not being willing to throw the middle of the football field, not being willing to run outside, defensively, not being willing to blitz, not being very much in the area of disguising or complexity as far as in the defensive ball and the way you draw your coverages. You bring a coach in that just fixes those real base items, you get improvement from the team. You start getting these young guys in year 1 and 2 getting to year 3 now, and they start to improve with that as well. You talk about the cuts you can make here from Adams to Quandre Diggs to Monet to Dwayne Eskridge. Just a base 5 cuts you make, which frees up a ton of money for you to not only go out there and handle your normal business, not only be enough money to go out there and re-sign a Leonard Williams, but then maybe go out there on that market and go get yourself a Patrick Queen on top of that if you want to go do so. And you pair that together with a strong draft, and now you have those little advantages you're now taking advantage of on both sides of the ball. I think that that's a team that can be 3 games better next year. I look at that and go, if I do all those things and I was 9 wins this year, can I be 3 games better next year? And if I'm at 12 wins, am I not probably in a contending status at that point? Yeah, I am. If it was a matter of I didn't do that and I was going to be right back at 9 wins, and I might feel differently. But the fact that I think you can be 3 wins better on the back of these said things, I can't pull it back at that point. I want to more go forward.
Yeah, the time for this team to actually blow it up was 2 years ago, when you didn't really have any young, exciting players except for Metcalf, and he had already been in the league a few years at that point. You had guys like Diggs coming off the books that you could have just let walk. You had Wilson. You had just made the Wilson trade, so you didn't have a quarterback in your mind at that time. That would have been the time to blow it up. You're not going to do. I don't think you're going to do it now when you have so many nice young pieces.
Yeah. Agreed. I think just the timing of it right now is that you have to push the ball forward. I get that, MJ. I totally get it. And you're not alone. There's a lot advocating for let's This is what you do now. Take it down, reset, rebuild with it. Normal situations, I think this is what you would do. It's just this being the unique place it's at that we just got through essentially year 2 of the rebuild. I think you just keep you keep leaning that rebuild into year 3 and keep it rolling, keep it moving, and see where it goes from there at that point. So we'll see. We'll learn soon, MJ. Their approach to this as we get in the offseason by the cuts they make and by if they do pull it down to that range. But I get the impression by the way Macdonald talks, by the way John Schneider talked about the team underachieving this year, that they both kind of maybe feel like this team's a little bit closer to getting itself up there with the best out there in the NFC.
Right.
Thank you, though, MJ, so much for the $20 donation. Really appreciate you for that. A Problem Child, thank you for the $5 donation. What do we think about Tavondre being the Pierce for the Seahawks?
Yeah, I love Tavondre. He's very fun.
Maybe the Michael Pierce? Is that what he's
Yeah,
saying?
the Michael
Tavondre?
Pierce, the nose tackle, I think.
Yeah.
That is the nose tackle in Baltimore, right?
Well, him and the kid out of Connecticut that they got there.
Oh, yeah, Travis Jones.
Yeah, Travis getting some run at the end of the year.
Yeah. So, yeah, sign me up for that. I really like Tavondre Sweat. He can play 3 downs. I don't know if he will immediately, but he's a 3-down player. I think he can rush the passer too, which is incredible.
Yeah, it does give you a little bit more pass rush than you might get from. I mean, he is legit 360.
Oh,
yeah. He's not like, well, he's 330. No, he's 360. It's you can see it, but he does give you some unusual pass rush. There aren't really any one techs in this draft that are built like him or close to built like him, which is impressive because he's unique. And yeah, he would be awesome for us. I like the thought of trading back. If you trade back to, let's say 25, you get your Graham Barton, Troy Fatano, Cooper Bebe, then you come back and either go get your middle linebacker in the second round or get a Tavondre in the second round if he's dipped down there at that point. I think either makes a lot of sense. And Tavondre, you move Jaron Reed then behind him as your number 2. Cam Young fits in as the number 3. And now your interior is looking actually okay, especially if Leonard Williams is brought back with Draymond Jones and Mike Morris in the fray. That's not a bad interior defensive tackle position set up as far as the talents goes.
It's a real defensive line.
That's right. It's
we
legit.
Did not really have last year. We didn't have the depth for it.
Not for a while, I would say. Have we not had a real defensive line, Brennan? It's been a couple years. You know what I mean? It's been a couple years. But yeah, I love Tavondre Sweat. You're not going to move him off the spot. Double teams, one of the rare one techs who can hold up at the point of attack with double team blocks. You're just not moving a man of this size and this power. And like Brendan said, he can also give you some real unusual pass rush where you allowed him to be one-on-one against a center. He's going to bull rush that guy into the pocket in like 2 seconds. You cannot ask your center to hold up on him in one-on-one in pass protection. He's just too big, too strong. And he'll work his way back there quick.
Yeah. I would. Tavondre's one of my guys in this draft. They're going to be, we're both going to have like 5 or 6 guys that are just our guys. And I can already tell you there's something about Tavondre that's different from even a guy like Mozzie Smith, who was a first-round pick last year. This guy's different. Yeah,
because Mozzie Smith was a 1 tech and a 3 tech body. This is a 1 tech with some 3 tech skill to him. Almost. Yeah. And a one tech that's like you're as big and monstrous as they come in his size, but yet still with some of that ability to give you that pass rush, which you just don't ever usually get with those 1 techs. They're just trash cans that sit there and stare at things. That's all they do.
Yeah.
Try to look like they're running fast when they're not even moving.
And no disrespect to those players, but maybe the modern NFL is starting to move away from that a little bit.
I think it definitely is. Where these guys now have to start to move a little bit more in space, and I think that's why we saw that kid out of Baylor last year that was that 1 tech that a lot of people really loved, but he kept dropping through the process because people were like, yeah, but he's rotational and he can just kind of only be out there for a couple snaps, and he can't move left to right more than a couple steps to have any impact on the play. I mean, you kind of need more than that. And that, I think, caused him to drop a bit more than I would have if it was a draft from 15 years ago, Brendan, where that guy probably would have been a first-round pick.
Yeah.
Jessica Butler, thank you for another $5 donation. Appreciate the double donation, Jessica. Says, do you know if we have heard if Macdonald is bringing any players with him from Baltimore?
Well, that would be illegal for him to talk about right now. That's called tampering. That's how they got Magic Johnson out of Los Angeles.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Remember that? He went on, like, what was it, Jimmy Kimmel, and talking about Paul George and the Thunder who had him at the time were like, wait a minute, he can't do that. He's still on our team.
I do remember that. Yeah, they
Yeah.
got him. They fined him pretty heavily for that.
Yeah, it was bad, which is why, if you don't know how to be a front office executive, you shouldn't be a front office executive.
No, it's
Mhm.
you gotta be careful with it. That's
Yeah,
Magic too. Magic can't help himself, He just
yeah,
he wants to talk and he wants to let the cat out the bag. He's always been kind of that way with it.
yeah. But I'm sure he's going to bring in a couple guys. That's usually how this goes, right? You go to a different team. There's one or two players you want to bring just so you're establishing a little bit of familiarity.
Yeah, Jessica. I think the Van Noy one, I think if you're just talking about one that makes a lot of sense because he'll be super cheap, knows the defense, vet presence you bring in here, especially if you move on from a Bobby Wagner, having a Van Noy in the house might not be the worst, thing to have. Clowney's got familiarity being here in Seattle once before, and he will be a free agent. And certainly I think that could make some sense, though he may not like the fact that he wouldn't be necessarily assigned to be the starter because you've got Uchenna and Boye that are your number 1 and 2s at that point out there. But hard to say on the other guys, Jessica. It's Patrick Queen and Geno Stone are potentially options, depending on if Seattle wants to spend the money for both those two guys. But he, like Brendan said, I think he'll bring some guys in. Who it is, a little too early to tell at this point. But somebody will probably come over from that. A couple guys will probably come over that Baltimore team, knowing how to run the defense, how to show the other players how to run it.
Yeah, it could even be somebody really low level, like a Rock Ya-Sin. That's possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Something cheap doesn't have to necessarily be one of the big front runner guys. It could be one of the just, guys on kind of the fringe of the roster or third on the depth chart, but know the system backwards and forward and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you, though, Jessica. I'm anticipating somebody. Certainly would love to see Clowney brought back. I never wanted to see him leave.
Yeah.
Mega Lucario, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, would Mike rather re-sign Leonard or sign Matabuke?
I mean, Matabuke is much younger.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Has Matabuke? I mean, is this Matabuke's first really good year, or was he good last year?
5.5 sacks the previous year.
Okay.
He was okay. I mean, he was solid coming into that role. I mean, it was solid.
Yeah. I mean, he could be like a kind of a 1-year wonder still, right? I kind of feel like we're not there yet. Leonard Williams is not a 1-year wonder.
No, I mean, 4 years in the league, he's had 1 year that he jumped up of dominance in a contract year. One might say that in itself is a little bit of a warning sign on looking at a guy like that. First, like you say, with Leonard Williams, who has been a consistent player throughout the course of his career. Is he a star, Leonard? No, but do you know exactly what you're getting with Leonard Williams? And again, there will be a difference in cost. I know you mentioned that you don't think you'll get the Quinn and Williams money, but I mean, Aaron Donald's taken the high end of the salary train for a basically a 3-tech defensive tackle to $35 million, right? 33 million, something like that is where he's at as far as the high end goes. Mm-hmm. Cost is only going up on this. The rate's going up on this. So where last year 24 million is what the top end defensive tackle is going to get, which I think is what around LeBron Payne got.
Yeah.
Matabuke probably gets 20. Yeah. And if Leonard Williams gets 15, I know I'm a little bit different on this. It's weird, Brendan. We're both, I think, on the opposite ends of this with the Queen to Brooks debate, because this is a bit of the inverse of the Brooks Queen debate, where I don't want to go with Brooks, but I want to go with Queen. I don't want to go with, even with Queen, I'm not sure of, like, I might be okay just drafting a guy, but with Leonard, I'd rather go this route because I know what I'm getting with Leonard. No injury history. The cost will be $5 million lower. With Brooks, you do have that injury history. And with Matabuke, you're paying all of the price for the last season, and you don't know if that's exactly what you're getting going forward.
Yeah, I think I come down on the Leonard Williams side of things, but I can understand the other perspective somewhat. I think it's not out of pocket.
No, I do get it. I do get if somebody wants to prefer the younger guy, especially when the money is, I think 15 to 20 is, though I think Matabuke maybe gets the 4-year deal, whereas Leonard gets the 3 on the other side of that too.
That's significant.
But then the question comes down to, Brendan, if you're giving a 4-year 20 to Matabuke, would you maybe just prefer to give 3 and 26 to Chris Jones?
How old is Chris Jones now?
30.
Chris Jones is better than Leonard Williams, so at a certain point you probably go that way. But I don't think Leonard Williams is going to push past 20 million like that. I don't think. I think he's going to end up. think he's gonna. What did I say? I made a video about this. I said somewhere around 16 mil a year.
That's right. I think. Okay, so 4 years, 4 years, 20 on Matabuke, or 3 and 26 on Chris.
Ooh, I guess you got to go Chris Jones at that point.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying anything bad about Matabuke, but
Oh,
the possibility still exists that he's like a product of the system and a one-hit wonder.
yeah.
Like, I think that's far more likely for a player like Matabuke than even like a Geno Smith. Some people were saying that after 2022, Geno Smith could be a one-hit wonder, and I was like, I don't think that really happens with quarterbacks that much, especially not
No,
like this. But a
no.
guy like Matabuke in the Ravens system with Macdonald doing all the stuff that he's doing, he could just be a random guy who was right place, right time.
Agreed. And I would go the same way you go in that too. That would be preference Leonard. I'd go 326 on Chris too, and call it a day with that on that side of it. So be interesting to see what Chris gets on the open market, because he's still coming off a good year, but getting older, and doesn't seem like the Chiefs have got quite the money maybe to spend on him, because
Mm-hmm.
they've just haven't gotten him locked in there. But
Mm-hmm.
great question, Mega. Great question, man. Leland Kimball, thank you for becoming a member of the channel. On my side or his side, I'm not sure which either one that, but thank you for that. Appreciate
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Leland.
Daniel Bailey says, does Kobe Bryant have a place in this defense?
I mean, we played him a little bit at safety at the end of the year, but it was a very small sample size. I can't really do anything with that. So I think we're just going to have to wait and see on this one, see what Macdonald can do with him. There's got to be some way to tap into that. He's such a good fumble forcer. He's got that, Peanut Tillman stuff going on. You got to find a way to work that in. It's way too valuable.
Well, you felt good enough to make him as a tackler, to get him out the slot, get him to safety. We're needing the corners to now tackle in this defense more. I've got worries with Tariq Woolen and Trey Brown, both, Brendan. And both these two guys, when Mike Macdonald comes in and looks at both those two guys, I think that I don't think it's a likelihood that they get traded. I think that there's definitely going to be a consideration in the building on both of what would be the trade market on either of these two guys in another place, because I don't think Trey Brown's getting substantially better as a tackler. And I'm not sure on Tariq Woolen, he's got the size to do it. If he can get better in his technique, where Trey Brown's just 5'9", and I just don't know if at the outside he can just get it done sometimes with his height. But maybe the answer here, Daniel, is slide Kobe back into the outside position, outside corner. He was outside of the fumbles caused, he wasn't really a success on the inside in coverage as a slot. As a safety, if you go through any of the games he played going back to the preseason, or even the small sample sizes that he got to play during the year at safety, he did not perform well when put into those situations to play. So I think go back and put him back at the place where he was a two-time All-ACC cornerback, where he was the Walter Thorpe Award winner. Let's move him back to the outside corner and see if he can be functional out there in that way, out there, because it's not looking like it's working to me on the other positions.
Yeah, but obviously a new defensive coach means there's a possibility of flipping things around, and maybe they tap into something that we just didn't see these first 2 years. I mean, he has missed a lot of time this most recent year. He was hurt, so we didn't get to see development.
It's true. And we don't know where maybe Mike Macdonald's outlook was of him coming out of the draft either. Maybe he saw him as an outside corner coming out. Like, what? You guys have him at slot? What? You have him at, or he thinks the opposite. You guys should have him at safety. That's his skill set. That's where he's going to fit best long term. So put him there. And there could be a pull to that because of the fact that you might get light at safety with Adams, Diggs gone, and you only got Julian Love, Jarek Reed coming off of a torn ACL, and Kobe Bryant, and that's it, isn't it?
There's the Penn State special teamer guy, Sutherland, I think.
Okay.
That's
it. That's it. Yeah, that's it. So, that might also push a little bit of this too, Daniel, but they just got to stop bopping him around, get him on a position, let him learn the position, let him get good at the position, and see if he can flourish in that position. That'd be my approach to it. Any other stuff on this hire, Brendan? I guess let me do this. Let's do it's like we would do with the scoring of the deal. Grade this hire for me.
I think that as far as hirings go, this is a 10. I don't know. Like, yeah, I would have preferred an offensive head coach, I guess. But I'm also glad we didn't get so lost in that philosophy that we decided to hire somebody who wasn't nearly as good.
Mm-hmm.
He says all the right things in the press conference. His resume is really good. The only thing you can say is that he hasn't done it before. And if he had done it before, you probably wouldn't be able to get him, because he probably would still have whatever job he got, because he's probably going to be good. Like, let's be real here. He's probably good. There's no guarantees. I mean, go look at Sean McVay's resume before he got hired by the Rams. It wasn't that good. He was an
Yeah.
OC for 3 years, and only one of those years was good.
Yeah. Well, and if you could say too, if it's about getting the somewhat quasi legendary coach that's been banging around, and you know what you're getting, and he's got a track record of success, and maybe he's got a more or two here, but he's got some really good stuff he does good, or you knew you're getting the McVay type. You knew you're getting that guy who nobody knows what this guy's going to be, but he's going to be this, and we capture him. You take that first. You take that second option versus the first, and having that opportunity to take advantage of that guy's first real, we got ourselves a star here. We got our J-Rod coming up out of the minors who just suddenly burst out into the pros, and he's the real thing right from the jump. I know there's a lot of fail rates, but there are also those guys, Brendan, that are like the McVays that come out there and they do flourish from the jump. They do come out and give you great coaching right on the onset of it. It doesn't necessarily mean you don't always have to have a bad first stop or a bad 2 seasons to kind of figure out all your bumps. Right. That's not always the way it has to work.
But my number 1 was Harbaugh, who we were never going to hire. I think that's become pretty clear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My number 2 was Ben Johnson, and that for one reason or another didn't work out. Can't. I mean, it's not like we lost him to another team. He just straight up was like, I guess I'm going back to Detroit. Yeah. I want to win the Super Bowl. So I think you did the best thing you could. So I can't really say anything negative about it.
No. And I would grade the same way, A, 10, whichever metric you want to use on that. I think it's an A grade, Brendan. They took a thorough process. They hired the best candidate like you. I wanted an offensive guy, but it wasn't, what stands out to me about Mike Macdonald and about what they did this situation is what I kind of apply my own thought process on this isn't about a rigidity of approach. This is about all available options, all hands on deck, all possibilities, and consider each and every one kind of through and then arrive at the best answer. And if you do that, then there's a really good chance of success. As we started off and talked at the start of the show tonight, Brendan, there's no guarantees for success in the NFL or any sports in your decisions and moves you make. You can just set it all up, set the table up, and then hope that the meal is going to go well. And, that nobody's going to get poisoned. And I think the Hawks have done that here to the ultimate degree. So props to Jody Allen for pulling the trigger on this to get this done with Carroll in the first place. Props to Schneider for going and making what is a really, really strong, great hire and a forward-thinking hire, and hopefully should be a successful hire.
Yeah.
We got Suspicious Stench finishing us up here tonight with another $2 donation. I think that's Leland Kimball changed his name to Suspicious. Yeah. Love the new name, Kid Leland. Says, I'm glad we went with the defensive head coach and Niners kryptonite. Well,
yeah. If the Niners win the Super Bowl in a couple weeks here, do you think we get the Week 1 Thursday night football game against them with our brand new head coach?
Where do we go? We go through the AFC. No, they'll go with we play. I think that they'll probably go with the Bills, Niners at home, something like that, because they play the AFC East next year. So it'll be, I think, something like that. There'll be a draw, maybe a little bit to it, but I think they'll think, we can get a bigger ratings boost with the, I mean, hell, they might even be in a rematch with Kansas City again, with the way that those 3 games work outside the deal. So it's kind of strange how that goes, but it can go that way too. But I think Suspicious. I was thinking about this with Mike McVay, and I don't think this is the part we talk about with Sean McVay much, Brendan, but this was part of this process was that McVay was brought in to slay the Coach Carroll. That's one of the big reasons he was brought in. Yeah, it was bright, upcoming mind, but the offense that he was going to bring was going to be built to take apart and go after this Coach Carroll defense specifically. And so going out there and finding a guy who's got a defense that's well built to go at these kind of offensive attacks. This is a little bit as well. We were talking about the top, Leland, of defenses maybe starting to come a little bit more forward and taking some steps to, maybe they're not catching up to the offense, but maybe they're catching a couple steps up. The offense still remains far out ahead, but maybe they're making some headway for the first time in a real long time. And this guy, the way that he shut down that Niners offense, he makes Brock Purdy have to think. Brock doesn't get to just drop back there and go through one read and go to a second read, and it's all bump, bump, bump. It's, okay, I think I'm seeing this. Drop back. Oh, God, I didn't see that right. Throw it. Panic. And the same thing from Shanahan style. And so the predictability, the understanding what I'm going to see pre to post snap, that's thrown out the window now. And now you create complete utter confusion for them. Think about what McVay did with Goff. I'm going to get you up to the line of scrimmage with 20 seconds left to be in your ear and tell you, okay, the defense is in, we got Seattle right now in a cover 3 look. It's off coverage, Jared. So just hit the over route now, Jared. Okay. Hit the over route on the X because they're in cover 3. Okay. Jared does a little nod, like he's nodding to nobody, Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay. Now he comes up the line of scrimmage. It's cover 3, but McVay can't sit there and be in the way. It's just read after the snap. That's what you now bring. And it's in stark difference to what we were before, Brendan. I mean, we're going from the most unpredictable with the coverage set to the most predictable, the most unpredictable now. And that's part of the reasons why I think we're going to get some immediate returns here on this team into next season that some people aren't taking into account. Everybody's doing it on that kind of how much talent do we have, who's the OC is going to be. But some of it to me is just that stuff you've left on the table of those little advantages that are there to just, all you got to do is grab them. They're right there. Just go. It ain't like you got to be super smart to take advantage of them. Just pull them into your bag, take them off the table and bring them into your bag.
Yeah. I mean, it felt like we never had a coaching advantage in any game over the last several years, which is a terrible position to be in.
It really is. And I can't help but think that too, when it comes to players, you eventually, when you're having that faced on a yearly basis, that wears you down, knowing that you have to overcome that on a weekly basis. Another thing that should hopefully boon up the psyche and mentality of the players, understanding that there's going to be times on a given week so that we will outcoach the opposition on X's and O's. We'll put them in that position where we'll catch them with their pants down. So it's going to be an exciting year. Suspicious Stench, Leland Kimball, I thank you for that $2 donation. Finishes it off here and finishes it off right. Do me a favor, folks, and if you could for me, please hit that like button. I really would appreciate it. Me and Brendan will, of course, be doing these shows throughout the course of this off season. We've got a lot of action lined up next week. We pushed the show off this week, but next week we will be taking a look at the salary cap cuts and where we've got to trim, where we got to cut, who we got to keep, how we can save money, how we can maximize our savings. Maybe Brendan and I will go hog wild. We'll say, you guys want to go for it next year? You want to go all in? I know we've got people talking about taking to the studs. What if we go the opposite direction? What if we go all in? So we'll take it end to end with you guys on that, and we'll look at either side of this, and certainly the Hawks are turning it over in a similar fashion. Please hit that like button today on this video if you could, as well as if you're not subscribed, get subscribed to Hawks Nest and Seahawks Brendan Nelson, as we do constant work throughout this offseason. Ain't no offseason on either of these two channels, especially when there is so much excitement at play as we go into this offseason. So thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate you. Brendan, thank you for coming on in the house here, man, and chopping it up, man. It's a bright day.
Thank you for having me on, man. Thank you for having me on. Can't wait to do it again.
I think this is going to be a lot of fun going through this team and looking at this team, and it's going to be a funner team to kind of analyze and what they're doing, because there's going to be a lot more of us looking at going, wow, that's a smart approach. Wow, that's a smart approach. Wow, that's a breath of fresh air, Brendan. Breath of fresh air. Well, thank you, brother. Appreciate you guys watching today. We'll be back in a week to take a look at that salary cap situation and have a little bit more, of course, updates on the OCDC and talking that over too, no doubt about that. But until that time, I shouldn't have to remind you with a great, exciting hire like this. I shouldn't have to remind you with an ownership group and a front office that understands we've got to do better. Being mediocre, getting into the back end of the playoffs, that is not what we've established here. We've established a championship mindset, and you can call that a spoiled fan group. I call it an establishment of a mentality in place that we don't want broken, that we don't want to shy away from. This is what we want to lean into. And it seems like our front office and our ownership group is leaning in the same fashion. That should get you hyped. That should get you excited. But just in case it does not, let me and Brendan remind you one more time as we finish this up. Please, by God, don't you ever forget. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.